Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Merry Christmas. So we're heading into the holidays here. These are your DC books for the week of December 12th, 2023. I don't know how we're going to keep this short. DC's got like nearly 20 books out this week. It's a problem. Some of them, granted, we've got a reprint of Birds of Prey. We've got a black and white version of the Batman Joker Deadly Duo, so you can see Mark Silvestri's gorgeous art uncolored. So that's amazing. I think there was one other one that was a reprint as well. Batman Gargoyle of Gotham has a black and white edition and a regular edition as well. So you add all that up and it's like 20 books. But even if you take away the ones that we're not going to cover in detail here because they're black and white reprints or the reprints of the first couple issues of Birds of Prey or what have you, that still leaves you with 17 books. Um, I just have to say, I get that part of it's because some of these books are late. Okay, so again, they shouldn't be late. Don't schedule series, 4-issue series takes a year to come out. No, don't schedule it till all 4 issues are done if that's what you have to do. But then you take your whole slate and then you divide it up so all the weeks are even. We have some weeks, 6, 7 books. That's fine. But when you have 17 books, I'm sorry, it's just too many. It's just too many books to have coming out. The shelves are already crowded. I'm not going to say none of these books, none of these stories deserve to be told or what have you, but man, it's a big burden on somebody who's, especially around the holidays, you're having to spend money on gifts and what have you, and then you got 17 books coming out, and I get it, right? Like, this is for pleasure. You don't have to buy anything, but I just think 17 books in one week is just too many. However you slice it, and I get it. It's hard to schedule. You schedule out your whole year, and you have all the weeks the same, and then things happen. I get that, but the reprint of Batman 428, right, is I think is a perfect example. That's the book where Robin died, right? Jason Todd died back in the day, and for the first time ever, they're reprinting it, but the version where this was like less than 10 votes. I think it was 5 votes that Todd died. You called a 1-900 number way back in the day, in the late 80s, early 90s. That used to be a thing. But it's a perfect example, right? There's absolutely no reason to be putting this book out this week when there's 20 other books. Just don't put it out. Just wait a week or two when there's a shorter week, lighter week. If you have to wait till January, so be it. But why pick this week when there's so many other books? It's not a good look, DC. You just look greedy. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I can't even venture to say, usually we start off, hey, it was a good week, it was a bad week. There's so many books, I can't even tell you. I have no idea. My mind is just overflowing with all these stories I'm trying to keep straight. So anyway, anything to add, Rocky? Other than God, there's just too many goddamn books.
Uh, yeah, it's too bad. I share your sentiment. And now, admittedly, you and I read. Well, we try to read them all. I didn't read them all. I couldn't read them all. It was just too many, and it didn't help that most of them weren't very good, in my opinion. And because there were too many, it does contribute to my mood. That's why I have the Scrooge up here, because I might be a little bit Scrooge-like. Both of us might be a little bah humbug this week. There's quite a few disappointments this week, I thought, and which really makes the glut of comics from DC this week all the more frustrating. Which I was really hoping that they would maybe come out. I think next week might be a little bit better, but in any event, let's get to it. We got a lot to read and a lot to talk about. let's,
Yeah, and
let's get her going.
we'll try to keep it short and sweet because there's so many. We'll maybe not get into quite as much detail, but we'll kick it off with Green Lantern number 5 from one of our favorite writers, Jeremy Adams. We have art here by Zermanico, and Scott Godlewski does the last few pages. Colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Dave Sharp. Pretty interesting what's going on. We saw at the end of last issue, Sinestro was so angry about Hal Jordan foiling his plans and so angry about being stuck on Earth and not being able to get back to Kroragar, he was able to manifest a Red Lantern ring, and there's an epic fight between him and Hal Jordan here. We know there's something going on with the emotional spectrum. Hal senses it. Sinestro would sense it as well if he wasn't so, wrapped up in his own stuff. He's able to use his Red Lantern ring and actually leave the Earth, whereas when Hal starts to get too far away from Earth, his powers seem to fade. So yeah, there's not only something going on with the emotional spectrum, but there's something going on with these different rings. It's not clear why Sinestro is able to manifest his own Red Lantern ring and leave Earth, whereas Hal has manifested his own willpower ring and he's not able to leave Earth. Maybe it's something subconscious, maybe not. But absolutely fantastic story. All these hints of things to come. There's a Green Lantern event, I think, coming next year as well. That's kind of leading into all this. Or this is leading into that, I should say. So I was really impressed. This is one of the better books of the week, especially the Zermanico art. There's one particular page. It's a double page spread where Sinestro's attacking a couple of jet planes, and then Hal has to save the pilots. He's unable to save the planes themselves, but he has to save the pilots. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's absolutely amazing. Love the art. Love what's going on here. The only thing I would say, if I have one little nitpick, is that the issues are, I feel like I'm not getting a big enough chunk of story. And that's partly because Jeremy Adams is smart enough to know, hey, I need to give Zermanico's art room to breathe, right? I think a lot of the artists that he worked with on Flash, their art maybe wasn't quite as detailed. So we didn't have as many big panels, double page spreads, that sort of thing. So we got more panels per page, which felt like more story per issue. With this one, and also I'll blame the fact that he lost 2 months to Night Terrors. God, I just want, the story's so good, I want it quicker. I want it faster. But again, that's a minor nitpick. It's actually a compliment to Jeremy and Zermanico that I can't wait for more of this story. It's absolutely amazing. There's a backup as well I'll talk about in a second, but I'll give Rocky a chance to give us his thoughts on the main story, because seeing Hal Jordan manifest a giant like Pacific Rim robot to fight this kaiju-like monster that Sinestro created was just awesome. Just awesome. The fight, tons of action in this issue, and it was amazing. What do you think?
Yeah, there's Zermanico art is really fantastic. This is one long giant fight scene. Narratively, plot wise, we didn't really get a lot of progression, but then this was a fun issue. This is the last time I have another artist that is able to pull me in and read a full issue of just of a glorified fight scene with a minimal amount of plot development is actually Daniel Warren Johnson, which he's currently doing over in Transformers. This reminds me a little bit. I read Transformers issue 4 this week from Image Comics, and I really enjoyed it. And Zermanico's art is manages to pull in. He's really good at crafting and artistically choreographing fight scenes as well, and does a stellar job here between Sinestro and Hal Jordan. The mystery still remains how Sinestro can manifest a Red Lantern ring of all things, and what exactly is going on. There's also a revelation with that Calabac is actually dead, and that the Calabac. Pardon me, sorry. That's correct. Thank you for the correction. It's not Darkseid's Media, no. It's Kilowog is actually he's actually dead, and Hal Jordan's been talking to a construct all this time while he's living in his trailer. So there's a lot to be revealed here, and the most significant aspects of the story have yet to be revealed. So Jeremy Adams is keeping a lot of that under the chest, so to speak, and we're probably not going to get more of that until the new year. But we have something to look forward in the new year, and I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to a fantastic. A variant cover. Again, I usually bitch about variant covers, but every now and then I'm compelled to ignore and be a little bit hypocritical and say that this is an awesome variant cover with Santa Claus, wearing all the Christmas ornamental power rings on his finger in that classic pose. I really love it. It's behind me for those watching on YouTube, and it's probably a 1 in 25 variant for all I know, or 1 in 50. But it is a pretty cool looking variant. Santa Claus himself wielding the Christmas spirit power through all the Christmas ornamental power rings. So I thought it was pretty good. So those of us who have been with Jeremy Adams from the beginning of his Green Lantern arc, we're still with him. It's still entertaining as hell. Little slow progression on the plot, but I've got no problem with that. I've been enjoying the story, and the art makes it all well worth it.
Yeah, as far as I can tell. There's a Tyler Kirkham 1 in 25 stock cover and a 1 in 50 Michael Walsh stock cover, but the the Santa one looks like it's open order. So
Okay.
yeah, it looks pretty cool for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, up next we have Batman and Robin issue number 4.
You don't
Joshua
want to talk
Williams.
about the backup?
Oh, that's right. I do want to talk about the backup. I mentioned it and then I forgot. And now I lost it. There we go. So the backup, Wayward Son Part 3, Peter J. Tomasi story, David LaFuente is the artist, Tamara Bonville on colors, Rob Lee on letters. So it's interesting. We know we're going to get a Sinister Sons, I think it's called, series starring this kid who purports to be Sinestro's son, along with the son of General Zod, which we get a chance to see him, Lore, show up in one of the stories in Action Comics. I think it's Action Comics. One of the books anyway. God, yeah. See, that's what happens when there's so many books. So yeah, we think that or we know that is the team up that we're going to get. And we're starting to see in this particular issue how he's going to get off the planet that he's been stuck on, where his mother supposedly abandoned him. It still isn't 100% clear that he is the son of Sinestro. He certainly believes that he is, but whether he is or not, it hasn't been revealed yet. And I imagine they'll probably keep that as a mystery for a little bit longer. But I guess we'll see. And the other thing that's interesting is, will he get a different name, right? So the kind of the villain he works for, if you will, the guy who sort of runs the street urchins in the ghetto that he lives in, is named Nagaf, and he calls him Korg. He calls the little kid Korg because, he's abandoned there as a baby, doesn't even have a name. So he calls him Korg because he can tell he's from Korrigar. So will he have a name? Will he give himself another name? Will he continue to go by Korg? And really the big question is he truly Sinestro's son? I imagine that's one of those mysteries where DC's going to milk that for a long, long, long time. And even if some writer comes along and tells a story that definitively says that, yes, it's Sinestro's son, it's only a matter of time till another writer comes in and writes a story where, no, he's not really Sinestro's son. So it's probably going to be one of those situations where we'll never really know. The one thing about the story, and I've mentioned it before, LaFuente's art is sort of an all ages, kind of a younger feel. And so, I don't know if that's the audience they're going for, if they're trying to go for that Super Sons audience or not. If so, this style suits it. If not, then, maybe you want a style that's a bit more mature. But I think it works for the story that's being told. But I would be curious to see what Korg looks like under the art of somebody else from a different art style. But I don't know that we're going to get that because LaFuente is doing the art in the Sinister Sons story as well. So we'll see. I just have a feeling, because you and I talk about this all the time, when somebody's supposed to be a little kid and they're drawn like a little kid here, but then in the hands of another artist, they draw them and they might look like they're 20. So, the age of characters can be problematic at times. Damian Wayne is a perfect example. You look at the way, one person draws him, he looks 11. Another person draws him, he looks like he's 16. There is a difference. But I know it's challenging sometimes for some artists to draw younger characters. But overall, I'm enjoying this. It has me looking forward to Sinister Sons a little bit. But at the same time, that's going to star two characters that really aren't very likable, especially when it comes to Lore. He's very abrasive. So hopefully that doesn't prevent that from being an enjoyable series, right? Where you just read it and you're like, man, I don't like either of these characters. I have no one to root for. I don't really want to read it. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the backup?
Yeah, I actually share your sentiment. I've got mixed feelings about the art, and it's going to be interesting to see what artistic style they want to use when they do the Sinister Sons. I would prefer, and this is my bias because maybe we're older readers, I would like a more mature style of art. And I would like, I don't want a Super Sons feel to it. I personally would prefer a little bit more of darker humor, a darker turn, because it is Sinister Sons after all. It's not Super Sons, and I hope they're not trying to imitate Super Sons. Otherwise, frankly, it defeats the purpose in my mind, because These are juvenile, glorified galactic juvenile delinquents, and they ought to be portrayed that way. And they shouldn't be particularly have. They shouldn't have a particularly strong moral code. They should have the opposite, and because they're bad guys. And I'm getting less and less. I find less and less appealing this idea that we got to change all the bad guys and give them anti-hero status. No, sometimes if they're an asshole, portray them like assholes. Let them embrace their inner villainy. That's what I would like to see, and I think it would actually be more villainous. Take a like I look at The Boys on TV, the success of The Boys, and Generation V on TV. It's okay to go dark with some dark humor, but I don't know if I can see DC doing that. But boy, I would sure love to see it. But overall, it's not bad. But again, mixed feelings on the art. I share your sentiment on that.
Yeah, all right. Speaking of art, let's move on to Batman and Robin, issue number 4. Joshua Williamson is the writer. Mikel Janin, along with Simone DeMeo, are the artists on this particular issue. Jeremy Cox and Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors. Steve Wands on letters. Really interesting. I found myself... the art style that Mikel Janin uses here, I couldn't look at particular pages and go, oh yeah, that's Mikel Janin. I looked at some of the Simone DeMeo pages, and I can tell it's DeMeo just based on, the style, but it was a little cleaner and wasn't quite so ethereal when, for the pages I knew for sure, okay, this is Simone. The majority of this is a Simone DeMeo page, but it felt a little more solidified. It didn't feel so digitally painted. The lines felt more solid and what have you. And then when I looked at pages where it's clear Mikel Janin's doing the heavy lifting, it didn't look like necessarily what I expect from Mikel Janin in general, right? It had a little more ethereal feel. So I think that Jeremy Cox and Romulo Fajardo Jr. on the colors probably got together and said, hey, let's make Simone DeMeo's art style look a little more like Mikel Janin's art style and vice versa. And so what it does is it's not so jarring, right? Because when you think about it, if this was straight, Mikel Janin style, how it normally looks, and straight Simone DeMeo style, how it has looked in this series so far, that would be very jarring. So I want to give a lot of credit to whomever it was, and it may be that Simone and Mikel did some things as well themselves to kind of meld their art styles together a little better so they don't look so disparate. All that to say, it's a pretty good job. Are the art styles different? Can you tell who worked on a page more so than the other? Yes, you can, but it didn't pull me out of the story. And I had when I went back, when I got to the end of the story, I was like, well, hold on a second, this doesn't look like Simone DeMeo's art. And then I went back and flipped back through, and I'm like, oh wait, yeah, the art style does sort of change throughout the story, but it was so subtle that I didn't really notice it. Then I went and looked at the credits again and realized, oh, I didn't even realize. I read the credits but didn't put two and two together that Mikel Janin was doing the art style. So all that to say, one of the things I've struggled with on this book is the art style. It's made it where I've felt like this barrier to entry to be pulled into the story. This is my favorite issue so far because of the change in art style. It felt a little more solid. I felt I didn't have to quite struggle so much to be pulled into the visual storytelling. And again, this, totally my preference, totally subjective. Other people's, experience may have been different. But this issue for me felt a lot better. I understood better what was going on. I just thought it was really interesting with what we had going on, going all the way back to Damian's past, and finding out about one of his early trainers that kind of had a falling out with Talia and a falling out with Damian. That was interesting. Another thing that it made me realize is, so that's usually what happens to characters when they've been around for a while, right? Like I've talked about it a lot, how I don't necessarily care for retcons, retroactive continuity, where you go back and you change something about the history of a character. And usually it has to be a character that's been around a really long time, to where somebody will go back and change something about their origin and say, oh, it didn't happen this way, it happened that way. Or they'll just go back and add something, right? It's not as bad when they just go back and add something. It can be problematic at times. Like the example I always give is to say Batman's the world's greatest detective, but yet Scott Snyder goes back and adds the concept of the Court of Owls. And don't get me wrong, I love the Court of Owls. I love Talons. I love the whole concept of it. but it diminishes Batman in some way, right? To say this secret clandestine organization or group has been operating under his nose since Gotham City began. So since before Bruce Wayne was born. And he operated all this time as Batman and didn't know what was going on. Like, that diminishes him, right? He's supposed to be the world's greatest detective. He didn't know it was even happening. When you do things like that, just based on who Batman is and who the Court of Owls are, it can be problematic for me. It doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't logically make sense. When you're going back and you're talking about people who trained Damian Wayne, I have less of a problem, right? Because I'm assuming he got trained by a ton of people, and we haven't heard about all of them yet, even now. So I'm more okay with that. But it was a little reminder, hey, Damian's been around for quite a while now. We've got people going back and adding things to his origin. He's certainly by no means a new character anymore. So that was kind of interesting, and I'm curious to see where it goes next, because as it turns out, at the end, when Bruce takes him back to school, to high school, where he doesn't want to be, he kind of changes his mind because he thinks that his principal is that trainer that he had that had a falling out. She wasn't killed, as was kind of hinted at the beginning or in the flashback, and she's actually there at his school, and now he wants to investigate, and he tells Bruce in the last page, hey, I guess I have a good reason to go to this school after all. So it's interesting. See where it goes. And of course, it's always great to see White Rabbit when she's drawn super sexy by both artists. So yeah, my favorite, by far, without question, my favorite issue of the series so far. What do you think?
Well, straight up, I stopped collecting this at issue 3. And because I didn't like the art, and because I just the indie market's so great, and it's the story just I wasn't quite there. And now the art, I got to say, the art is fantastic. It's way better. The Simone DeMaio pages, I can still tell it's his art. I'm not a fan of it, and it does sort of take me out of the story, and it got a little just I wasn't a fan of it, and it was enough that I stopped buying the physical copies. Now I'm tempted to put it back on my list because the art is substantially better on those pages. The flashback sequences, and like you said, if that's a combination of Janin and DeMaio's style, it's way better to me. Just way, it's to me, it's like night and day. It's more of a DC house style, way better. This Mistress Harsh, I love her. The fact that Damien had some pretty kick-ass, gorgeous little female teachers back in the day that were under the rule and thumb of his mother Talia, and Mistress Harsh was, she was punished for daring to lay a hand on Damien. I don't know how you're supposed to teach a kid martial arts and not maybe, give him a slap once in a while, but that's what happens when you work for Talia Ghul and you're training their young son to be an assassin. But it was cool, and it is. I thought it was hilarious because for the first 3 issues, Damien trying to get Damien to go back to school, but Damien doesn't want to because he wants to help. He wants to find Shush, and he wants to find the man bad guy, and he wants to help Bruce. He wants to help his father catch the bad guys, so to speak. And then all of a sudden, at the end, I mean, Damien gets one up on Bruce by saying, "Oh, guess what? I think my teacher is the one we're looking for." I mean, I thought that was kind of cool. And suddenly, he wants to go to school again. That was pretty cool. I agree with you. This is the best issue so far. I did like the first issue, though, story-wise, but I really like this, and I like the way this works. And it's amazing how much better this storyline feels now that Gotham was over, because Gotham was always in the back of my head and tainting it. But I like this much more. And god damn, Williamson, I gotta put the thing maybe back on my pull list for physical copies. But yeah, I enjoyed this issue. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, up next we have Outsiders, issue number 2. Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly on the script, Robert Carey on art, Valentino Tadeo on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. Pretty fun story here. We've got Drummer, which I just love that name that they came up with for this member of the Outsiders. We've got Luke Fox. I almost said Luke Cage. Luke Fox, or DC, not Marvel. And then, of course, Kate Kane, Batwoman. And they go to explore an area of the sea called the Enlil Triangle, where there's a storm that's been raging for over 25 years, 23 years, what have you. And when they get there, they find the Challengers of the Unknown are there as well, and the Challengers of the Unknown don't want them there. They explore it anyway. They find a little baby monster, which is a combination between It's a sea monster, but it's a combination of a shark, a crab, and like a giant octopus, and it looks amazing. All credit to Robert Carey for an amazing design. And what they come to learn, the there's actually a graveyard. There's this giant sea monster is actually a baby. And they end up sparing its life. And it's really interesting. Even the Challengers of the Unknown, who are there to sort of clean things up and kill monsters and do whatever, agree to let it be because it's way down at the bottom of the ocean where it's not going to hurt anybody. So all in all, it was a fun story. The one thing that didn't make a ton of sense for me, though, like the Challengers of the Unknown are just such jerks, to the point like they are going to strand the outsiders on the bottom of the ocean. Don't care if they live or die. I found the portrayal of the Challengers of the Unknown to be, I don't know, a little out of character for what I know the Challengers of the Unknown to be. So that at times that took me out of the story a little bit. Like it didn't make a lot of sense, and it made for a little bit of a choppy narrative at times because they were so over the top whenever they kind of came on the page, and it was almost to the point of not being believable. But it's a minor nitpick. Overall, it's just a fun story. And again, the character design for that monster design is just amazing. So I can forgive a lot because that was a fun concept. And that monster was absolutely amazing looking, being a combination of a shark, a crab, and a giant octopus. So where this goes from here, I guess we'll see. So far with 2 issues in, it almost feels like X-Files with a comic, like you're going to have whatever weird thing you're after for that one particular episode, and then it's going to jump to another. There hasn't been a whole lot of continuity between issues yet. They feel very self-contained, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm kind of curious to see if that feeling will continue or if it'll start to feel a little more serialized. But all in all, yeah, fun issue and absolutely amazing sea monster. What do you think?
I was, uh, if I wasn't familiar with Planetary already, I would say this was good. But because it's comparison to Planetary, I'm disappointed. Uh, Planetary would have had Planetary started off right away with a self-contained story that had implications moving forward. It was much more clear, more interesting. This just had to do with me with the glorified monster at the bottom of the sea. Challenges of the Unknown. I don't know why they're even in the comic. They all come across like jerks to me. We learned nothing about them. They could have been anybody. We weren't told much about them, and what we were was all in riddles. Uh, Having successfully opened Pandora's box and following the subsequent mysterious death of their client, the Challengers of the Unknown are awarded a lucrative Pentagon contract to eliminate the worldwide genie menace. What the hell are they talking about? It's nothing's explained. It's I just thought it was I just thought it could have been so much better. Was it okay? Sure. But this idea that Batwoman of all things has some instinct to save some creature that lost its parents at the bottom of the ocean. Um, this if again, I'm being, it might sound like I'm being harsh, but the planetary concept is focusing on things that are really obscure and remote, and this, while this is touching upon that in a little bit of an archaeological sense, it's not near as interesting as it could be. And for a second issue, I thought this was a very poor choice. Of This should have been maybe. I was just disappointed with it. I hope it gets more interesting and more fun, and I hope that what plot elements from this issue would be linked to future issues, because I want this. This is a very, very. What does this have to do with the bleed? What does this have to do with the multiverse? What does this have to do with the archaeological? Like, I mean, I'm looking for something deeper, and admittedly, I am comparing it to one of the greatest stories of all time, greatest 24 issues of all time, Planetary. But so it's not bad. I'm glad this is. I gotta say, Batwoman's more interesting here than she has been in any other iteration. I like Batwing, I like Batwoman, I like Drummer, so I like where this is going. This is still more interesting to me than half the DC comics right now, straight up. But I say this as an underhanded compliment. I want to push the subject matter of these narratives that much higher because there's so much cool potential with this concept. And so I say that as a compliment to Jackson Lansing and Kelly. And I like Robert Carey's art. It's again, it's better than the first issue anyway, and I hope it continues to improve.
Yeah, I think part of the thing here is that Lansing and Kelly they're mining from past stuff, right? What's the most recent iteration? What's the most recent book? Challenges of the Unknown have showed up in. They were in the metal event. They had their whatever imprint that was that Dan Didio did. That kind of came and went real quick. Supposed to be Marvel style. The one that gave us that damage, that different damage character from Robert Venditti and Aaron Lopresti. Tony Daniel worked on that book as well. There was a Brimstone title. There was Sideways from Didio himself. There was a Challengers of the Unknown book. It was supposed to be Scott Snyder, and then Snyder barely had anything to do with it. And it's that version, and that's where some of the Challengers of the Unknown, the original members, were killed. That's mentioned here. So, but we're going back 5 years here to mine continuity, and I'm sure those guys read all that, and you're going to get more out of it if you can tie all those pieces together with where the Challengers have showed up here or there since then, in the Dark Crisis event, in the Death Metal event. And if you don't remember that stuff, and honestly, I completely know why you don't, because a lot of that stuff was really forgettable, then you miss out on some of the context. Yeah, there's only so much space in the book, which is why, again, it felt a little bit choppy. So I'm trying to completely separate it from Planetary and not comparing it. And I think that's why that's the way to do it if you want to enjoy it. Because you're right, nothing's going to live up to Planetary. It's one of the greatest runs and comic series of all time, as you said. So anyway, let's move on. We've got Batman, Santa Claus, Silent Night, issue 2, written by Jeff Parker, art by Michelle Bandini and Trevor Hairsine, colors by Alex Sinclair, lettered by Pat Broso. Again, this is a 4-issue series coming out every first 4 weeks, I should say, in December. The art is fantastic, especially the Michelle Bandini art. The Hairsine art here is when they do the flashbacks that kind of explains how Santa Claus and the Krampus were working together. I love that Jeff Parker's taking these myths, because at the end of the day, Santa Claus is a myth. A lot of people don't think of him that way, because a lot of times when you think of myths, you do think of like monsters like the Krampus, right? So you're taking this idea of these two myths and merging them together. And there have been different stories over the years that have postulated that Krampus and Santa Claus would work together. Krampus to scare the kids into behaving, and Santa Claus to reward them when they do behave. And that's sort of what's going on here, but not exactly. Parker does give it a little bit of a twist. So it's a lot of fun. It definitely, suits the tone of the season, being around the holidays. And the Michelle Bandini art is absolutely gorgeous. And there's not really much more to say. This is, again, just a lot of fun, lighthearted, out of continuity in terms of you don't need to be reading any of the DC comics or know any of the events that have gone on to be able to, buy these 4 issues this month, share them with your kids, read them as bedtime stories or what have you. My favorite scene in the whole book is at the end when Superman shows up, and Batman says, "Oh, it's him. I knew he'd hear about this." And Superman lands, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to help you out. What's going on? What's he going to say?" Instead, he says, "You didn't tell me that you knew Santa." Seems like he's a little, he's in his feels like Batman. You didn't tell me you knew Santa. So I'm sure we're going to get a Santa Claus story from Superman next issue. We'll see how that goes. So what were your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, what I really like about what DC has done here is how many times, and most of the time we get like by the number Christmas anthologies, holiday anthologies from DC. And in fact, they released one, Twas the Night Before Christmas. We're going to be reviewing that as well. But this one is actually kudos to DC for actually weaving a story. Jeff Parker, writer, weaving a story that actually weaves into actual DC continuity in a crazy, believable kind of way, possessing some degree of verisimilitude given the DC universe. We get Black Canary here, we get Green Arrow, we get Damian, we get the Bat Family, we get Superman. It's I've not I don't know about future issues, but we might get a who's who of the DC universe all coming to meet Santa Claus or this Claus character and this Krampus, who actually has a very believable origin. The idea that Santa and this Krampus work together with the goal of helping kids become the best version of themselves with a combination of fear and a little bit of reward. There might be some controversy there in terms of how to scare kids into be good, but it has a ring of kind of interesting truth to it. And all of our fairy tales, whether it's Santa Claus or anything else, there's a darker element to that. And I think it's handled here by Jeff Parker and scripted in a very good way. And Santa Claus looks really cool. He looks like a cool looking superheroic Santa Claus. He doesn't got the pot belly. He's got a great build. And you got this Krampus, sort of like the glorified, he's definitely more of a devious looking Grinch creature. And it's an interesting how he's merged, though he created his own mythology here within the context of a DC universe. It works. It works well. The story it's fun to read, puts a smile on your face. It's by far probably that I've read. It's by far the best Christmas story that DC's put out in years. I can't think of one that's been this entertaining. I'd have to go back probably to the '80s for a good Christmas story. But this is pretty good. We're only I think it's 4 issues long, and
Yep.
an issue's released every week, so it's well worth people picking it up if you want a good taste of Christmas cheer.
Yeah, and in the last couple of years, maybe that the first one was 5 years ago now. It's been that long. We had Claus, right? That came out
Yeah.
from Grant Morrison with art by Dan Mora. That's the first time I got to experience Dan Mora's art, and it was set in the past and very much rooted in myth and what have you. And I think there's 3 different volumes because the first one was so successful. If you're a fan of those Claus stories, we haven't got one from Morrison in a few years. Pivot over to this. It's got that same kind of feel, going back and mining myths and dealing with Santa Claus, obviously. So amazing. All right, up next we have World's Finest Teen Titans number 6. This is the final issue of the series. Mark Waid is the writer. We've got Mike Norton on art, pages 1 and 3 through 11, and then Emanuela Lupacchino, page 2 and 12 through 20. Colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Steve Wands. What do you think of this final issue, Rocky?
Uh, well, Mark Wade has spent the last 5 issues getting us to know all of the younger versions of these characters that we know so well: Dick Grayson, Roy Harper, Donna Troy, uh, uh, Bumblebee, etc. And you know, uh, basically, he's weaving a story of really what is ultimately some of their first misadventures, where they're getting to know each other as a team. And ultimately, this culminates with them being last issue. They were sort of humiliated by the Terror Titans that made them look like fools. And there's a lot of inner turmoil and conflict between the team members, whether it's Donna Troy's sort of dysfunctional relationship with Garth, whether it's the whole team not really liking Dick Grayson finally revealing, Robin finally revealing his secret identity, but he was under pressure from Batman, told not to reveal his secret identity. Roy Harper's sort of distant relationship with his surrogate father, Oliver Queen. All of that comes to a head here, where Robin, finally they decide to work as a team because as Robin himself says in this issue, the reason why they lost to Teen Titans, the reason why they lost to the Terror Titans was not because they were beaten by the Terror Titans. It was because they defeated themselves because they never got along and they didn't work as a team. And that changes here. And of course, this entire issue sort of plays out like a movie, where this is the third act of a movie where the heroes finally get their act together and come together as heroes and defeat the bad guys. That's what this issue is, and it's done I think it's done very well. The art by Emanuela Lapacino and Mike Norton combined on the art, colors. Jordi Belair on the colors, really well. They defeat the Terror Titans, and they do it. They do it in. I love the choreography. I like how they work together, like the action scenes. It all works very well. I mean, a lot of the lessons here are a little bit tropey, because Terror Titans are technically aggressive good guys. So there's a little bit of interplay there where Terror Titans fancy themselves good guys, but they use lethal force, whereas Teen Titans, of course, don't want to do that. And there's a lot of lessons that you'd expect. Dick Grayson confessing to Batman. He thinks Batman's not going to let him be on the team anymore, but he makes the sacrifice, revealing his secret identity. He break, he it's emotional, he confesses himself to Batman. He doesn't want to lie to Batman, but Batman gives him a chance. And right away we're seeing we see early signs of Dick Grayson becoming a team player before Batman does. And that's one of the reasons why Nightwing is we got to remember that the present day Nightwing is one of the most beloved and liked, genuinely the most liked hero in the DC universe, as played out in Dark Crisis. There's a reason for that. Dick Grayson is a team player. He will become Nightwing. Robin will become Nightwing, who is a team player, and he became a team player even really before Batman did, as Batman himself acknowledges here in this issue. I thought it was very well done. Mark Waid, he's the perfect writer for this because he knows he knows where these characters have ended up, and he knows how to craft a tale that will seamlessly sort of tie into that, but with a modern day take and sensibility. And he's done it very well here. And I want to give a compliment again to Jody Belair on the colors, because there's no other team in superhero comics that benefits from a great colors more than the Teen Titans. It really pops off the page. So I enjoyed this issue. It was a great end to this 6-issue story arc. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to use that phrase "pops off the page" because the colors are sort of muted a little. They're not these bright primary colors, and being that this is sort of an origin story for a team that's been around for decades, it makes sense to do it almost in like this. It's not sepia tone, but it signifies that this has happened in the past. But obviously, this is a modern retelling of them getting together, which also is kind of the feel of the story, right? Like, this isn't Silver Age. This isn't, and happy ending sort of thing where they always get along and, it's white hats and black hats and whatever. There's more nuance. There's more kind of realism to the relationships that these teenagers have. So all of that really works. It's a very good job at introducing a new generation of readers to who the Teen Titans are as a team, why they are teammates, why their team ups work, why, and maybe it's a little on the nose with the Terror Titans, the way they're able to beat the Terror Titans because the Teen Titans can work together and ultimately the Terror Titans can't, right? And Robin acknowledges that. He says, hey, at the end of the day, we're a team. We actually work together. You mentioned how well they are fighting together. And even from the start of confronting the Terror Titans, the plan that Dick Grayson comes up with, the trust he shows by finally revealing his secret identity, the punishment he gets from Batman, it's all very much there and feels nostalgic and feels like this could have happened in the recent past, 10 years ago, let's say, when these characters got together, maybe 15 at the most. But yeah, it's a very good introduction to who the Teen Titans are, and kind of bringing their origin into modern times. And then you can go read Tom Taylor's Tom Taylor's Titan series and see, what those relationships between these different characters look like when they've matured. So ultimately, I think it was very successful. I'm not the biggest Titans fan, but for someone who is, or somebody who wants to kind of get a feel for who the Titans were at the beginning, this is a great example, great book to take a look at. All right, up next we have Action Comics number 1060, The Main Story New World Part 4 from writer Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Eddie Barrows, Fico Ossio, and Eber Ferreira, with Joe Prado and Jonas Trinidad, and then colors by Matt Herms with Chris Sotomayor, and finally Dave Sharp on letters. Big reveal last issue that the head of the Blue Earth movement was actually this Talia al Ghul, or not Talia al Ghul, but the daughter of Talia al Ghul and Batman from a different Earth. So she calls herself Sister Shadow. And again, if you read Batman and Authority special that PKJ was involved in, that actually ties into this. It's so long ago, I don't really remember that story very well. But I'm sure if you went back and read it, it would give you more context into this story. We also get a glimpse at what Otho looks like in her incarnation, that she was on this other Earth, this other part of the multiverse where she wasn't rescued from Warworld by Superman. Great looking design by Eber Ferreira, absolutely amazing. And it's all explained, right? Like the Blue Earth movement, why this Sister Shadow has it in for Superman, why she wants to destroy him, why she's been traveling all over um, different versions of Earth and so establishing these blue Earth movements and basically getting those worlds to sort of denounce and turn their back on Superman and not support him, not believe in him. It's a big revenge plot basically. So it's magic, and Superman is aware that it's magic that Sister Shadow is using to give normal people powers, so they feel like they don't need the super family to help protect them. So when it comes to magic, who better to help Superman find out where Otho has gone? Somebody he considers his daughter. He goes and recruits John Constantine, and Constantine right away, very wary of what's going on, warns Superman about getting involved. Talks a lot about the transactional nature of magic and how Superman needs to be very, very careful. But of course, it's his daughter that's missing. So when he thinks he hears her voice coming from a magical hourglass that's in the kind of the layer of Sister Shadow, he grabs it and is pulled into hell, quote unquote. So we'll see where that goes from here. But great story. Again, showcasing the ability for Philip Kennedy Johnson to world build, in this case with the magic corner of the DC universe, with this Sister Shadow character, with this other dimension where she's out for revenge and looking to vanquish Kryptonian. So I'm really enjoying this. I'm gonna be sad to see Philip Kennedy Johnson not on Superman anymore, because the guy is just an incredible idea machine. Don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to seeing what some of these other superstar writers, Jason Aaron and what have you, do. But I'm gonna miss Philip on Superman just because his ideas are so big. I know it wasn't necessarily on the War World saga at the beginning, but it won me over eventually. And ever since then, once he kind of got 3/4 of the way through that, and ever since then, he's been just firing on all cylinders. And I just, I like his Superman so much. And, when we had him on the show, he talked so much about leveling up Superman in terms of the power level that he has. And I feel like there's a lot of that hasn't been explored as much as I would have liked to see it. Like go back to that Luthor Superman fight that we saw where Luthor shoots him, to a different galaxy or whatever, and he flies back in a split second. Yeah, I'm gonna miss seeing stuff like that for sure. So, anyway, what are your thoughts on the first story here in action?
I, I it caught me totally off guard. I had no idea. I had no idea that this Sister Shadow even exists. I don't recall. I don't think I ever read that Superman Authority special. That there was this daughter of Bruce Wayne, or Talia, the daughter of an Al Ghul and Bruce Wayne in another
I don't think that
universe.
she was mentioned. Her world, her part of the multiverse was mentioned, but I don't think she was specifically mentioned in that
Yeah.
story. But I could be
Well,
wrong.
I'm fully admitting that it probably was. I just forgot, and so this she wasn't even on my radar. I would never have guessed this in a million years. But I like it. I kind of like it. It's kind of cool. And I like that it kind of conveniently wraps this plot up, because I didn't. Some people are saying that think that maybe Philip Kennedy Johnson, maybe his run is prematurely ending. What some people are suggesting, and maybe that's true, to make way for Jason Aaron's 4-issue Bizarro run, which will be coming out in the new year. That may be the case, but I actually like this. This doesn't feel rushed to me. I think it's kind of cool. I like it, and it's something that you expect a powerhouse menace like this Sister Shadow to come out of the shadows to try to take over the Earth, to get revenge, because they used to have sort of a multiversal empire, or a universal empire in different worlds and their machinations were destroyed by Batman and Superman at one point. And I kind of like it. I like the image of the future of what Authoro or Ortho also might end up being, the Superman's daughter, and he calls her daughter. Superman thinks of uh, the orphans as his children, and that's made quite clear. There's some really epic art. It really is. This is a beautiful looking story, and I'm really curious to see how it ends. I love seeing John Constantine. I love his warning Superman. Superman. Don't touch anything. They're in a magic room. Don't touch anything. This is a magic room. Of course, Superman. I mean, Superman. It reminds me of Silver Age stories, or even the stories between Superman and Batman in the '80s, where Batman would always tell Superman, quit rushing into things all the time. Think a little bit more before you rush in. Superman is rushing; he's letting his emotions get the best of him, and John Constantine is frustrated, and Superman ends up getting pulled in. We get Bloodwind and the Demon at the end, which is pretty cool. The last time we saw Bloodwind was in Hell, and he's got a pretty cool origin, which is related to Doomsday. And so to see Bloodwind again and the Demon, and they're going to be helping Superman defeat the Sister Shadow. I think I'm really curious to see how this is going to end. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, kudos to PKJ and the whole creative team on this. This was one of the more enjoyable ones this week for me.
Yeah, the second issue or second story we have Suicide Dreams from writers Nicole Maines and Steve Orlando. Fico Osio is the artist. Colors by Luis Guerrero. Letters by Rob Lee. It kind of continues with a story we got in Titan's Beast World Tour Metropolis #1, where Dreamer and John Kent teamed up. Now that we're continuing with that, following right on the heels of their battle and Dreamer sort of relocating some of the immigrants of Metropolis to kind of a secret town, as it were. They're hanging out there when Amanda Waller shows up at Dreamer's door and somehow convinces Dreamer to go along. Like, I can't believe, John Kent tries to stop her, stop Dreamer from going, saying, forgive our bleeding hearts. She doesn't work for you. We can't believe anything you say. But, Dreamer does have the ability to see the future. She realizes bad things are going to happen if she doesn't go and help Waller. But bad things are always going to happen when Amanda Waller is involved. So she does agree to go. She does agree to help, but she doesn't do things exactly the way Amanda Waller wants her to. But it turns out that Waller's okay with that, because what this really was a test to see if Dreamer would maybe do some things that were not necessarily over the line, but really close to the line, like sort of compromise her morals for the greater good. And at the end, we get this scene with Dr. Hate and Amanda Waller, and she's going to try to manipulate Dreamer and get Dreamer to sort of work for her. I'm sure she'll try to blackmail her or trap her or in some way manipulate her, because she realizes how powerful Dreamer is. The fact that she can see the future and then do things that change the future. Obviously, that's somebody that Amanda Waller wants to control. So it's just more Amanda Waller being a scumbag. Nothing new under the sun there. But I really do enjoy Dreamer, especially in the hands of Nicole Maines, the writer. She's the actress that portrays Dreamer in the CW. I think it was CW shows that she showed up in. And it's clear that obviously she has a great affinity for the character and really getting a feel and helping to kind of steer the direction of Dreamer forward in the DCU proper. So we'll see how that all plays out. And we'll talk more about Amanda Waller later in the episode when we talk about some other books. So, and I should also mention the Fico Osio art is absolutely amazing, but I've been really impressed with his art ever since we saw him on the Shiloh Norman Mr. Miracle series that we had. So his art continues to be amazing. What do you think?
Yeah, I was a little confused. I wasn't. How is Amanda Waller blackmailing Dreamer to help her here? She says, unless you want your hometown all over the 8 o'clock news, she's threatening to reveal Dreamer's secret identity to her hometown. Is that what she's trying to do? I
Yeah.
don't understand
So
the reference.
remember, it was Livewire that was infected with the spores
Right.
from Garo, and she ended up and she saw in her mind's eye with her powers that portion of Metropolis where a lot of immigrants lived was going to be destroyed. So she helped all those immigrants to relocate somewhere, a secret town, Paramus, I think it's called.
Oh,
And yeah, and so Waller's threatening to let the authorities know, hey, there's all these immigrants. I'm sure some of them are not there legally, and also reveal to all those immigrants in that secret town that Nia Null and Dreamer are one and the same. So I think Dreamer's thought is
Okay.
not necessarily that she's worried about her secret identity, but that if people know that she's Dreamer, then they may go after some of the citizens of the town to get to Dreamer, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like you wouldn't want anybody to know Superman's identity because then they're, the enemies of Superman are going to go after the people that he loves. So kind of that situation. But it definitely seems like Waller wants to keep Dreamer close and try to figure out a way to get more control over her, so she'll be able to blackmail Dreamer in a worse way, or a more, I guess, powerful way, so that she can force Dreamer to do what she wants. Hey, tell me what the future is. Tell me how I gain dominion over the. I mean, what's Amanda Waller's endgame at this point? To be the like empress of Earth? It doesn't seem like anything less than I get to tell everybody what to do, and they have to do. Like, I don't understand what Waller's endgame is. I just want all the power. I just want to be the boss. I just want to be able to do anything I want to whomever I want, whenever I want. Like, she's become such a terrible two-dimensional character, which, again, we'll talk about more of that later. But anyway.
Yeah, Amanda Waller is just she's a one-trick pony, and her tricks by now should have long since been held against her because she's fairly transparent. But it was obvious here on what the writer was what Mia Maines or whatever. What's the writer's name again?
Nicole Maines and Steve
Nicole
Orlando.
Maines, what she's trying to do. You got to get from point A to point B, which is Amanda Waller just blackmailing, being in a position of blackmail Dreamer. One thing that I thought was unfortunate, that I think is a little out of character for Dreamer, quite frankly, but if Maines had more time, is I can't. She just straight up attacked Afterthought, and it would seem to me that she would probably talk and reason with Afterthought. I mean, Afterthought. I mean, it actually says right in the narrative he's attacked by death squads. Well, and like he killed Death Squad. A Death Squad was out to kill Afterthought, and he killed the Death Squad. Well, obviously. So what did he do wrong? If a Death Squad's after me, I might kill them too if I had the ability. So it didn't sound to me that Afterthought was necessarily this psychotic individual. And you send a Death Squad to take him out, and he wants revenge against Amanda Waller. Who doesn't want revenge against Amanda Waller? And so I was hoping for a little bit more of a rational dialogue between Dreamer and Afterthought. Instead, she captures Afterthought, and as if somehow he's this, I get it, but now all that's happened is that Afterthought's back in under Amanda Waller's control. It just seems a little bit silly. Amanda Waller's got her hands in so many different things, and it's a little bit astonishing to me that not only top guys like Batman, but the entire superhero community, that all this is going on, behind the scenes, and C-level characters like Dreamer are being used, and as well as uh, A-list villains like Dr. Hate, who she also manipulated. Dr. Hate. Dr. Hate betrayed her, and at some point got back under the fold. So, but like I said, I mean, Amanda Waller is. I wish there's so much potential there for this story, but they never really seem to really make her truly be a compelling threat, other than, again, it's a one-trick pony. I mean, all she does is show up at the 11th hour with some leverage here and there. It's I'd like to see a little bit more. It's missing something, and what we'll have to see. I'm not even sure what event this is leading into. What big event are we leading into? Are we going to call it the Amanda Waller event? Call it the Wall? Like, what is the event that we're leading into with Amanda Waller's games here? I don't know what the hell it is. Maybe it's the next summer event that hasn't been mentioned. But in any event, yeah, okay. Amanda Waller once again has blackmailed another superhero. Yeah, news at 11, right?
Yeah, exactly. The last story, I mentioned it earlier. It's a story about Lore, and that being the son of Jor-El and Jor-El himself. This leads into the Jor-El, or not Jor-El's, General Zod, sorry. General Zod and Zod's son, Lore. It leads into Kneel Before Zod. We know that's the Zod series that's coming from Joe Casey and Dan McCade as artist. Casey's the writer here, McCade is the artist, so this is the feel and the look of what we're going to get in that series. John Kalis on colors, Troy Petrie on letters. So I think it leads for Lore, into Sinister Sons. For Zod, leads into that Kneel Before Zod #1, and gives us an idea of what exactly is going to happen. Joe Casey's given us a lot of hints of something that happens where Zod kind of stops being so benevolent, not necessarily benevolent even, but Joe Casey, when I interviewed him, he was like, I was reading up on what Zod was doing, and he's on this planet and he's trying to establish a new Krypton or whatever, and he's not just being the bad kneel before Zod guy that I knew. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Zod's a bad guy, and he's going to be turning him back into a bad guy. So there's hints here. Think of this as a prologue for that, if you will, but it's all sort of mysterious. We don't know. We know Zod's up to something, but it's not really clear what exactly it is in reading the story. But it has me. I'm really excited for that Kneel Before Zod series, and this has has me really anticipating getting to check out that Zod series. So we'll see. What do you think?
Yeah, I want to promote this. I want to recommend this because I think it's going to be interesting. I hope it's going to be really good. Let's be clear here. Going back to when Bendis wrote Superman, and I don't want to give people post traumatic stress when I mention Bendis' Superman run, but his General Zod during that run was given ultimately ended up he was given his own planet by the United Planets and New Kandor. He was creating a new. Uh, uh, well, in fact, some of the inhabitants from the Bottle City of Kandor ended up on New Kandor. Uh, Long story short, and so General Zod has his own planet and is starting a new Kryptonian race on this New Kandor planet. And you mentioned Joe Casey saying, "Look, I want my General Zod to be an evil bastard," and this is a return to this is the beginnings of how General Zod maybe returns to true evil villain form, and this is the beginnings of that. And it looks as if his son Lor stumbled upon some operation that his father is doing involving creating almost like a clone army of sorts because they don't have enough recruits. They don't have enough men themselves on the recruits or soldiers on the planet. So Zod seems to be going back into his old militaristic ways. Zod is talking to members of the United Planets. He doesn't like being. Zod doesn't work well with others. He's more of an authoritarian. He probably doesn't like being told, or maybe doesn't work well with United Planets. And he himself has mentioned he alludes to in the stories that there's been he's come under assault. Him and his some of his the people that reside on his planet have come under attack from other spacefaring sectors of space. And so slowly Zod is getting more and more pissed off, and he's got something planned. And his son Lor stumbles on to some sort of operation that his father has at the very end, where it looks like General Zod has been almost looks like he's creating some sort of various, I don't know, outposts. Are they for military purposes? What are they for? His father's up to something, and he's not being honest, and he's not sharing it with his son, and that seems to upset Lore, and that is going to lead us into that first issue of Kneel Before Zod. And Ursa basically warns her husband, saying, maybe don't keep our son in the dark. So it's going to be interesting to see where that story goes moving forward. So I would encourage everybody to keep an eye out for Kneel Before Zod #1. It might be one of the better series in the new year, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so as well, because it sure sounds great. I know Joe Casey's really excited about it. So anyway, next up is Titans Beast World #2. This is from writer Tom Taylor. Ivan Reis is the penciler, Danny Mickey on inks, Brad Anderson on colors, Wes Abbott on letters. We're both big fans of the first issue, and it's leading into, or at least mentioned in a lot of other books that we've been talking about, the events of Beast World affecting the DC universe overall. So what do you think of issue 2?
I didn't mind it. I didn't find that a heck of a lot happened, to be honest. Most of the issue consisted of just Nightwing battling Batman, who is changed into a beast. And a couple of interesting revelations here. First, I got to say, Ivan Reis's art is fantastic. Continues to be just amazing. Where it starts off, we're privy to the spores continuing to spread around the planet, and these Garo spores basically change people into animals, and these spores seem to be attracted to the most powerful beings. So that's a threat to the heroes of Earth, because while millions of humans are affected by the Garo spores, the minute these spores detect a superhero, somebody who's the most powerful, these spores certainly are more likely to migrate to superheroes, to metahumans, to superpowered beings, and that is obviously a threat. Poor Animal Man. I think it's on page 3 or 4. He's just going insane because Animal Man suddenly all at once, you can imagine somebody who's attuned to the animal kingdom. All at once, he bombarded with the senses of a million more different animals instantly appearing on the earth, and it practically drives him insane. And meanwhile, then a good portion of the comic is Batman just battling, saving people, rescuing them from other people who've turned into animals from the Gargoyle spores. And Nightwing and Batman work very well together. I thought that the fight scenes were just amazing. I love this DC house style. It's so great. Ivan Reis is he embodies it so well. Fantastic scene of Batman being overcome by the spores and Nightwing having to take him out. His interaction with Oracle indicating there's a fantastic, just one page but beautiful scene of Oracle, computer screens behind her, showing all major places on Earth overwhelmed by the spores. I can't believe I'm saying this because I made fun of this event early on. I made fun of it. I didn't expect a lot, but this actually feels that there's actually something at stake. I can't believe this. Of all things, a threat from Beast Boy. God, I wanted that guy to be dead in Dark Crisis. I will remind people. But anyways, I'm really enjoying this. Black Adam's going crazy in Kandak, and Batman is possessed now, and ultimately the issue just ends with Batman or Nightwing sort of needing to cage Batman, and Amanda Waller, our favorite character, wanting to. Even Amanda Waller feels that things are getting out of control, so that things are you know a little bit worse than she thought. But as Dr. Hate tells Amanda Waller, like, you wanted me to do this. I mean, I'm called Dr. Hate. I'm basically a glorified Lord of Chaos, for God's sakes. Would you expect things were going to go exactly according to your master plan? And so it's it's exciting. It feels like there's, even though not necessarily a lot happens, it's an adrenaline rush, and it's fun. And I think it's again, I had a smile on my face reading it, and it also was one of the better ones this week. So, what do you think?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's not so strange to kind of see an event take this sort of story structure style, right? Like the first issue covered a lot. Like we found out there's a Necro Star. It goes up against Staros. Traditionally they're sort of these mortal cosmic entities and enemies, if you will. And it was a big story with Gar. We both loved it. He had to transition from Gar to Elephant to Blue Whale to eventually become a Starro, and covered a lot. They defeated the Necro Star, and then all hell broke loose with Doctor Hate, basically kind of brainwashing Gar or affecting him in some way that he lost control of all the spores and affected a bunch of people on Earth. Right, so big story, a lot of events, a lot of time relatively passes relatively quickly in the issue with everything going wrong. And now issue 2, now we bring it home and make it seem more intimate, more relatable. Why should we care, right? And seeing Batman be affected and turn into this like wolf type creature, then we care, right? And we see Nightwing fighting against him. You can feel Nightwing's angst and what have you. So it's sort of almost a cliched way to tell the event, but it works, and especially when you read it in a collected edition, which, let's face it, that's how a lot of people read their comics now. You're going to have the story beats that go up and down, where you're going to go to the big events, what's going on. Now let's zoom in on to see how some certain individuals are affected. It brings in the idea of, hey, the last thing you want is superpowered beings being affected by these spores. It's laid out very well here by Taylor. It doesn't feel like spoon-fed. It comes across very naturally. Hey, by the way, what we've seen is the spores leave regular people to go to more powerful hosts. We get Black Adam as a lion in this issue as well, which is really cool to see, and I think he's even on the main cover. So a lot of fun. It feels big. I imagine the story is going to continue to alternate back and forth between big overall, hey, what's going on, and smaller stories that are focused on certain individuals. And then we're seeing a lot of one-shots that are anthologies that DC's been, this is kind of their MO now with the way they do events, which I'm not a fan of. And to be clear, you can just read the main story. You don't need to pick up the other one-shots that have 3 or 4 stories. A lot of times that's DC's way of giving some lesser-known creators a chance to see what they can do. Yes, you can get a little more out of it. Yes, sometimes there are stories that are a little more important than others, but if you just read the main story, you're going to be told everything you need to know. So continue to be impressed by Ivan Reis's art. He's absolutely amazing. Um, this is his last DC work. If you didn't hear, he's moving over to Image exclusively to work with Jeff Johns on his Ghost Machine or whatever the imprint is called over there. So at least he's going out on a high note with this event.
Certainly.
Up next, we have Superman Lost, number 9. Script by Christopher Priest. Carlo Pagulian handles most of the pencils. Jason Paz on inks. And then we have Dan Jurgens doing a few of the pages. Brett Breeding does the inks over Jurgens' art. We have Jeremy Cox on colors. Willie Schubert on letters. Pretty interesting here. We sort of expected Superman to lose it once he realized Lois had cancer. And Lex Luthor was the cause. And we sort of see that, but it's interesting. Priest has these images of Superman doing Luthor in, but it's all Superman sort of imagining what it would be like to be able to cut loose against Luthor. I sort of have mixed feelings about that. You want to think that Superman is better than most of us, and he doesn't fantasize about taking out Luthor in that way. But at the same time, this isn't the same Superman that we're used to, right? He's been through a lot. He's been through some trauma. And at the end, Hope, the Green Lantern that betrayed Superman while he was on that planet that he dubbed Kansas way out in space, she shows up on Earth. So what the ramifications of that are going to be, I guess we'll see. But it is laid out for those who didn't get the sort of subtext of last issue that, Lois comes right out and says it. Yeah, Superman, you came back physically. Clark, you came back physically, but you're here, but you're lost to me. You're not actually home because your mind is still out there. So it's an interesting issue, bouncing back and forth with the flashbacks of how it's almost like Christopher Priest was like, you know what? I want to write an issue where Superman gets to kill Lex Luthor in a bunch of different creative ways. And those are typically the Dan Jurgens pages. So it's kind of interesting, but at the same time, it felt a little choppy because it does bounce back and forth. And it's one of those uniquely Christopher Priest written issues that I could see if you just picked up this issue, you'd be like, what the hell's going on? Like, you really need the context of what's come before in the story. And likely this issue will make even more sense and feel a little less choppy once we see how it all ties together. So again, going back to the idea of reading it as a trade, that'll work 100%, work very, very well. But as a standalone, it is a little bit problematic, but I'm perfectly fine with it because I have been reading, I have been enjoying, and the Carlo Pagulian art continues to be amazing. And the other thing I really loved about the issue is it really showcased the strength of Lois in terms of being able to stand up for herself and really her being sort of Clark's anchor to Metropolis and to his humanity and kind of his touchstone. And we find out that she never really had cancer at all. Luthor faked it all and was giving her symptoms. So she's not going to die, which is a good thing as well. So, overall, pretty strong issue, but not the strongest of the series. A little bit of a bridge issue to what comes next, I imagine. What'd you think?
I'm still a little confused. Did she fake being pregnant or not? She said she got a stick.
Yes, she did.
So she did actually fake a pregnancy just to get a rise or to snap Clark out of his mental.
No. She faked a pregnancy so that she could hide the fact that Luthor gave her cancer. She thought Luthor gave her cancer. So she's sick. She's laying in bed. She's not feeling well. She's throwing up. She doesn't want Superman to know she has cancer. So she blames the nausea and the vomiting on being pregnant. She's trying to keep Superman from going and killing Luthor because Luthor gave her cancer, so she thought.
Well, isn't that what I just said? She faked being pregnant.
You said she faked being pregnant to shock him out of his mental whatever.
She does. She faked. So she
faked
did fake a pregnancy
to hide her cancer.
She didn't have cancer. She faked,
but she didn't know that at that time because Luthor gave her all the symptoms of cancer.
Okay, so she faked her pregnancy because she thought her husband would go kill Lex Luthor if she.
She thought she had cancer. She didn't want Superman to know she had cancer, so she faked pregnancy, morning sickness, basically, to hide the fact that she was sick. But turns out she wasn't really sick. Luthor just gave her the symptoms. And once she figured that out, she's able to stop Superman from doing anything. So, yeah, I know you had a big problem with that last time.
Yeah,
Wow,
no,
how could she?
it makes sense. It does, and thank you for clarifying
Yeah.
it. I still like this story. I still love it. I still love this concept. I love this story, and I like what Christopher Priest has done here. This has been one of the more, frankly, introspective and one of the better written Superman stories. I love this as a mini series, maxi series, because of the story of how of what it addresses. And frankly, Lois's actions. I can understand it. As she said, I mean, she doesn't think that Lex. I mean, Superman would never think Superman would never kill Lex Luthor. But at the same time, I really love the conversation that Superman has with his psychologist. That psychologist who basically Superman sort of denies ever having feelings that he wants to kill Lex. But as the psychologist says, I mean, he actually uses scientific terms and says, "Bullshit, you don't. You absolutely have thought about you're having these visions of hurting Lex for a reason. You hate him." And this is what happens when you hate people. I mean, so, I mean, uh, but Superman, because he doesn't want to hate Lex, he's sort of a little bit in denial about his hatred of Lex. And yet he chooses to embrace the better angels of his nature consistently, despite everything he goes through. But yet his mind, you can tell internally, he struggles with it. And he can't help but throughout this entire issue he imagines events where he's actually taking and ending Lex Luthor's life. And it's interesting, and you got to wonder how much of that is as a result of his what he's struggling with, his isolate, his mental struggles coming back from being gone for 20 years, coming back, finding out that he's lost the love, he's lost an entire life that he lived for 20 years. He comes back to Earth, finds out Lex is doing it, or believes Lex has maybe potentially killed his wife, and is playing mind games with him, taking advantage of him. You can see why Superman would be so frustrated, and still he doesn't. He still maintains and keeps his composure, and then a great ending with Hope showing up, and she appears to be pregnant. I wonder what Lois is thinking. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, because we only got one issue left. This is a 10-issue series, so be interesting to see how Christopher Priest wraps this up.
Yeah, especially with Hope showing back up. Seemed like the Clark started to have some sort of inappropriate feelings for her when he was out there, and then finds out she killed the other guy that he had befriended. So yeah, a lot of soap opera drama, as you would expect from a Christopher Priest book. So, all right, up next we have Waller versus Wildstorm, issue number 4, from writers Spencer Ackerman and Evan Narcisse, pencils by Jesus Moreno, inks by Vicente Cifuentes, colors by Michael Atea, letters by Dave Sharp. Yeah, there's some real problems with this series, right? First of all, it took way too long to come out, right? On top of that, Spencer Ackerman is a novelist and a journalist. He's used to writing prose, so this is a very dialogue-heavy issue. It's been a dialogue-heavy series, but this really kind of turns that up to the next level, probably in order to finish it in these 4 issues. But again, lateness just kills books. It absolutely kills momentum, and it kills books. I'd forgotten. I still am. I need to, if I wanted to, if it was worth the effort and time, I'd go back and reread this to make sure I have a good understanding. I sort of have a gist of what was going on, but again, it took so long to come out that it lost its momentum. DC's doing itself no favors in terms of sales. People aren't going to buy this because it's been so long since issue 3 came out. And I get it. Ackerman is a prose. He's used to writing in prose. And so although it's wordy, it's not necessarily a bad thing because it does get the gist across, but it's also not in continuity. Waller acts like a complete scumbag. It's one thing for her to betray and lie to all the superpowered beings. We know she has disdain and contempt for them, but now she's doing it to her supposed colleagues, right? So in terms of like characterization, I guess Spencer Ackerman completely understands who DC wants Waller to be, a complete amoral piece of shit, because that's exactly how she comes across here. It just makes you want to like murder her, right? Like, I guess get her comeuppance, and I guess that's what DC wants. Which, I've never been a big fan of Amanda Waller, but when I think back to the version of Amanda Waller that Ostrander created, John Ostrander, when he created that version of the Suicide Squad, there was a good backstory there, and it was like she was this tough African American woman who came from the slums and kind of had to make her own way, and through her own force of will was able to gain some power and have some influence and some authority. Yeah, she didn't exactly wield it the correct way, but I think you know at least her heart was in the right place. She was trying to do the right thing. She was doing what she believed in. This version of Amanda Waller that we've had for the last decade or so, again, completely amoral scumbag where I don't even understand. Again, what's the end game? If every person, superpowered or otherwise in DC Universe, went to Amanda Waller and said, "Okay, Amanda, you're in charge. We're all going to do whatever the hell you want us to do. So what is it you want? What is it you want? Do you just want us to be able to, do whatever you want us?" I don't understand it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Her whole thing is, "Oh, I want to keep America safe" or whatever. It's like, how's America not safe? Like, I don't understand the character anymore. She's become like so over the top, so ridiculously powerful, so ridiculously influential. She's like completely unbelievable as a character. Like, I don't, you have to like throw her away at this point, because any story that she's in my mind, she just ruins it. She just ruins it. She is so powerful. She's like the worst ex deus machina that's ever been in comics. Like, she can do anything she wants. She can manipulate whoever she wants. There's never any consequences for her actions. It's completely ridiculous. And this is a perfect example of the crap that she pulls in this series. And she doesn't necessarily get exactly what she wants, but again, this is supposed to be her early in her career, and this is sort of an idea of how she gets to Belle Rev in the first place, to eventually start the Suicide Squad, which only gives her more influence and authority eventually. So, Waller versus Wildstorm, whatever. Nobody's going to remember this. Again, the lateness of it hurt it. The structure, the story style, all the heavy dialogue, all the prose hurt it. People, the things that Ackerman pulled from, a lot of the political machinations of the Wildstorm universe, people that read DC don't really know about that stuff. I can't imagine it's going to sell very well at all. So again, I have to wonder, what was the point? What was the point of this? It's not without its merits. The art is fantastic, and it is, if you separate it from all the other context and history and whatever, and just read it as a standalone story and don't know anything about Amanda Waller or any of the DC or Wildstorm characters, there's value, there's entertainment value as a story, but not a whole lot, because again, it's just so dialogue heavy and so prose heavy. So ultimately, this is not something that I would really recommend. And I know part of that's because subjectively, I'm just so sick of Amanda Waller at this point. But I don't know. Maybe you feel differently, Rocky. Maybe you really enjoyed it. What are your thoughts on it?
Man, I am stunned at how uh, complex this is. I'm somebody who I generally like continuity, rich stories. I won't shy away from them, but I thought this tries to combine. I don't know what this series. I'm not sure why this series was approved, and I don't say that to be insulting. To be clear, it is a complex story, but it's overly complex. Uh, this issue read like a congressional, like what it's like watching a congressional hearing. There was no action in this final issue, none. It was one long dialogue, talking heads, where they're talking with various members of what Mr. Majestic of all people shows up. What? And then they're merging IO and Checkmate that enter the fray, and then Amanda Waller's in charge of that. This we get Lois Lane in the 80s. Lois Lane isn't. I mean, this can't possibly be in continuity. Where's Superman? You
Yeah,
got
it's Black
Lois Lane in the
Label.
Daily Planet. But
That's Black Label, so it's not in continuity.
no. Okay, fine. Which underscores my point. I'm not sure why this exists. What I'm getting at here is, with a couple of tweaks, why not make this a cool origin for Amanda Waller? With less talking heads and a little bit more action, this could have been something that fits into mainstream continuity. It can't now. It's absolutely impossible. You can't fit this into me, not even a little bit. Not even if this was stellar, if this was fantastic, you can't fit it in. It's not possible because of it's not a timely tale. It's not a timeless tale. It takes place in the 80s, and this happens and that happens, and Lois Lane in there. But it's in the Wildstorm universe. But this Lois, again, it's not, it's in its own universe. It's not bad, but it's unfortunately it's going to have a hard time finding an audience. And it didn't nail the landing either. This was a very, very disappointing first issue. It's completely misleading. It says chilling and, it says the final explosive issue. There's nothing explosive about it. There's nothing explosive about it. It's Amanda Waller being appointed to the top because she manipulates just through manipulation. There isn't even any killing in this. There isn't any action in this final issue. This is really, really disappointing. Really disappointing. Um, in any event, this talk about ending on a whimper, going out with a whimper. That's exactly what this did, and it was so sad because this took place in another universe and this wasn't in continuity. And we knew that up front. To have this end with Amanda Waller on top again, the same old, so disappointing. You could have done something different. This could have been an Amanda Waller that ends up losing, that gets her come up, and you could have thought outside the box, but instead we get the same old sort of story, but only considerably more boring. And that's just so sad to see. It's too bad because it had some pretty cool moments in earlier issues, particularly with the death of that one character who was killed by Deathstroke. So it has some cool action sequences, but this has ended on a supremely disappointing note.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree. All right, up next we have Titans Beast World Tour Gotham #1. Has a few different stories in here, continuing the Batman transformation story that we got in the regular Titans Beast World 2. The Good Boy, Chip Zdarsky on script, Miguel Mendoza on art, Mike Spicer on colors, Lucas Gattoni on letters, which continues the fight between Nightwing and this wolf Batman character, I guess you'd say. And then we have a second story. Grace Ellis is the writer. Daniel Hilliard is the artist. Rico Renzi on colors. Lucas Gattoni on letters. We see what has happened to Harley as she's been infected. Spoiler alert, she's turned into a giant bunny rabbit, like very muscular bunny rabbit. Not really particularly interesting in my mind. Then we have a third story, Scavengers, written by Gretchen Felker Martin as the writer, Evan Sharvin as the artist, Lucas Gattoni on colors. We get to see Jason Todd, Red Hood. He's turned into some sort of red wolf. Again, not particularly interesting. Doesn't really add much to the overall story of Beast World. And then the next story is a Huntress story. She is transformed as well. Kate Kane, or Cassandra Kane, Batgirl, goes after her. That's a story by Sam Maggs. PJ Holden is the artist. Lucas Gattoni on letters. Again, not particularly interesting. A lot of these anthologies, like I said, it's DC's chance to give some of these writers who haven't done work at DC before or done very little work at DC before have a chance to get their feet wet and work with editors and see if maybe they want to give them a larger assignment. A lot of people's first work at DC is in anthologies like this. The last story, Kyle Starks, who's done some work at DC. We were big fans of his Peacemaker series, along with Kelly Jones, who's legendary. A chance for DC to give Kelly Jones some work. Jose Villarrubia on colors, Lucas Gattoni on letters, and Stephanie Brown's story. She confronts Killer Moth, who's actually been turned into not a moth, but a cockroach, and she ends up taking off her boot and beating Killer Moth with it because that's what you do with cockroaches, right? Take off your boot and beat them to death. Yeah, and that's it. And again, the first story by Chip Zdarsky is far and away the best. Probably ties in the most closely with Beast War overall. Otherwise, in my mind, you can skip this. You don't even need that Zdarsky story. It's not really going to affect the overall story of what's going on in Beast War. So again, it's I understand why DC's doing this to give new creators a chance and see what they can do. But then you slap the Beast World on it, and it's making people think you have to buy it to understand what's going on in the Beast World event. You don't. You can totally skip this. So what are your thoughts on any or all of these stories, Rocky?
I don't have much to add, although I will say that what's a perfect symbol of this and of the pointlessness of this issue is the whole Batgirl Hunter storyline. I mean, it almost insults the entire premise of Beast World. I mean, Huntress turns into a cat, and the central conceit and the joke. It becomes a joke of a story where Cassandra Cain uses a laser pointer, and you know how when you have a cat, the cats will chase the laser pointer if you move the laser pointer on the wall. That's exactly what Huntress is. Did you? I mean, Huntress, the Huntress. My God, Helena Bertinelli, probably one of the most angry women in the DC universe with latent anger. She's got anger issues coming out of her ass all the time. She's turned into a Black Panther, and she suddenly becomes passive and chases a laser pointer held by Cassandra Cain. It's made to be a joke. I know it's supposed to be funny in a story called Claw and Order, and again, it's kind of cute, but I don't like that. I, if I got a big event and it's kind of cool and I feel a lot's at stake and the world's at stake and things are changing in animals and I'm getting into the story and then I get a side story like this that makes a mockery out of the plot line. I don't know. I find it bothersome, and so I viscerally am avoiding these one shot these collateral issues because of stories like this. That to me, they actually harm my appreciation of the concept of the story because it makes it into a joke. And why would you want to do that? And I realize you're 100% right. Obviously, that it's about getting writers. And by the way, the art's great. PJ Holden's art in that Claw and Order story is good. The art here is good. These are really good, talented people. I just want these talented creators and artists and writers to be telling stories that have more relevance, and because I think they deserve better than that. Or maybe give them a story, uh, a story to tell, and art and things to draw that are more relevant to the main story proper. But that's my rant, mini rant.
No, I totally agree. You're right. It's diminishing the quality and making a mockery of the main story, which we're trying to take seriously. When they do it in things like the holiday special we're going to talk about in a little bit here, I think that works better, right? Because it's not tied into anything. But they're doing it in these events, and it's just not good. It's not good execution. It's not good in terms of making people think you need to buy it to understand the event. There's just a myriad of reasons why they shouldn't be doing it for events. All right, up next we have Batman Gargoyle of Gotham. There's two different editions. You have the Noir edition that's in black and white. You have the regular edition in color. Raphael Grampa is the writer and artist. John Workman handles the letters. It's gorgeous, whether in black and white. It's such a different feel and a different experience reading it in black and white or color. I'm not going to tell you to buy them both. They are, I think, $6.99. They're larger stories, 52 issues. But interesting concepts, what Grandpa's doing here in terms of setting it up for for Batman to not want the Bruce Wayne persona. He's adding a little bit to the origin of Batman in a way. Some of the trauma that Bruce experienced as a child on the night his parents were killed. I'm not going to spoil it. We usually spoil here. You got to go read it for yourself. I could see it being controversial. Not necessarily true that Batman Gargoyle of Gotham is in continuity. We're seeing these villains. We saw Krytoon, new villain last time. We see Mothra for the first time this time, as well as some hints of other villains who have not yet to be named. But it's I don't want to say a sprawling story, but it's a big story, a story with a lot of different threads. It's going to be interesting to see how Grandpa brings it all together. This is the first story he's had a chance to write himself. He's done a lot of artwork. People know him as an artist, but how he's going to bring this all together, the reason the reason Batman wants to get rid of Bruce Wayne, wants to kill him off or what have you, makes a lot of sense with what's going on here. So I like the version of Alfred that we have here, with a little bit more of an antagonistic relationship. Him and Bruce don't necessarily agree on the best way forward. Same thing with Batman's relationship with Gordon. This is a different Batman, not one that's necessarily thinking logically. He's acting a little bit emotionally, a little bit irrationally in terms of how can I best accomplish my mission, and maybe reacting to certain events more than he should rather than taking a longer view. But it is a Batman that's earlier in his career, so that makes a lot of sense that he would be reacting that way. I have a feeling this is going to be a series that long term is evergreen, that people go back and read, and it really captures a certain feel of Batman, which again isn't maybe the Batman that we're used to in the regular DC universe, but a story worth telling, gorgeous artwork. If you're reading the colored version, the colors are bring a different dimension to it as well. I think ultimately I'm probably going to end up. What I'm hoping is actually they collect it in a hardcover, excuse me, that has both the black and white and the color. That would be ideal. Probably save myself some money that way. But we'll see how that all plays out in the end. So, any thoughts on this one, Rocky? Did you get a chance
Uh,
to read it?
it, yeah, I did, and I agree with you. I love the sort of the retelling and sort of a different take on, and the differences in Batman's origin and the relationship that Batman might have with Krypton, going back to his origins, a young Bruce Wayne who's becoming Batman. It's interesting. It's a different feel, and I particularly love the art. Um, my one thing when this comes out in hardcover form, my only complaint is that I really don't like generally DC's hardcover. They use the cheapest material for their hardcovers, and their page quality is terrible. Generally, I find in their hardcover renditions, because they cheap out on the hardcovers. I really wish DC wouldn't do that. I would love to see this in an oversized hardcover with good quality stock paper. That's not going to be happening. That's not DC doesn't do that anymore. They used to. They do it occasionally, but in any event, uh, I was surprised by some of the revelations here, and I enjoy this. I like the feel. I particularly love Commissioner Gordon. I really like how he's rendered here, and I like how we're watching him doing. Commissioner Gordon here is doing more of the detective work than even Batman. Bruce Wayne is a lot of character work, but it's a young, arrogant, sort of cocky Bruce Wayne who Alfred is not afraid to hold to account, and I like that. And it's a really interesting take. And I know that it's interesting. The first issue had sort of mixed reviews. I noticed you and I really enjoyed it, but it was interesting to hear different takes on it. But I really like this, and the layouts here, Raphael Grandpa. Some of the layouts, the unique layouts from page to page. Uh, wow, I lack the use of language to appropriately describe and do the pages justice with words. Uh, I like the art. I like the art. And I want to give a shout out to the second printing. The second printing of issue one is actually behind me for those watching on YouTube. Um, I think it looks really cool. It's Raphael Grampa's rendition of Batman, just in full regalia, and it looks almost like a sort of like a Victorian style era movie poster. I think it looks really cool. I want to pick up the second printing of the first issue, and I would encourage people to check it out if they have happened to miss it. It should be in on the rack this week. But overall, this continues to be a very intriguing series, and I encourage people to check it out.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And Raphael's definitely given his all. So, all right. DC's Twas the Night. Sorry. DC's Twas the Mite before Christmas. The final story is a Bat-Mite story. It's an 80-page giant. There's a ton of stories. We have a Teen Titans story written by Zipporah Smith, art and color by Logan Farber, letters by Dave Sharp. Harley Quinn and Amethyst story where they switch places, written by Rob Levin, art and color by Bob Quinn, letters by Hassan Otsman Elhal. Lex Luthor and a Lextacular Christmas Carol, sort of a retelling of the Christmas Carol with Lex Luthor as Ebenezer Scrooge, basically written by Ethan Sachs, art by Sue Lee, colors by John Kalis, letters by Becca Carey. Batwoman in Riddler on the Roof, written by Natalie Abrams, pencils by Maz Smith, inks by Norm Ratman, colors by Hi-Fi, letters by Travis Lanham. Booster Gold in the Santa copies, written by Jill Grant, art by Rebecca Isaacs, colors by Kurt Michael Russell. Farron Delgado on letters. Superman in Streaks in the Sky, written by Michael W. Conrad, art by Gavin Goodry, colors by Ryan Cody, and letters by Becca Carey. Bunker in It's a Bunkerful Life, written by Josh Trujillo, art and colors by Andrew Drillen, letters by Lucas Catoni, and then Bat-Mite in Wonderful Toys, written by Sholly Fish, art and color by Juan Babio, letters by Dave Sharp. This is a fun Christmas issue. Again, 80-page giants. I think it's $6.99. The Titan story, it's okay. Raven sort of feels left behind, not feeling a connection with the other Titans, and then, stuff happens. Everybody else goes to a party. She feels like she's not welcome, not invited. But then members of the Fearsome Five show up, and she's there by herself. She defeats them. She feels like part of the family again. Harley Quinn and Amethyst, your typical Freaky Friday story. They switch places. It's okay. The Luthor story, it's tongue-in-cheek. It's a Wonderful Life. Luther's very meta in the story. He's aware of what's going on, and he kind of just shoves it all to the side. And he doesn't have a change of heart because he's Lex Luthor. He's even worse than Ebenezer Scrooge. The Batwoman story may have been the best one because we had the Riddler's daughter, and it was sort of heartfelt, and that she doesn't want to follow in her father's footsteps, but worries that she'll never please him because there is a relationship there. The Booster Gold story was just kind of weird. He touches Santa. Santa's been, um, for lack of a better term, infected by some future tech. Rip Hunter shows up, and when Booster touches Santa, he becomes Santa, and then anybody that touches him becomes Santa. It's kind of weird, but it's fun, and the art's really strong in that one from Rebecca Isaacs. The Michael W. Conrad is supposed to feel very emotional. I don't know how well it succeeds. There's a guy at the beginning who's feeling very lonely around the holiday season. He's contemplating suicide. Superman talks to him, says, "Hey, I'm Superman, but even I get lonely." And eventually the guy, that's sort of a heartfelt one where it's sort of a happy ending. The guy gets help and decides to live and all that kind of thing. And the art is really strong by Gavin Guidry. The Bunker, it's a bunker for life, so it's a wonderful life. Of all people, Extraño shows up to show Bunker what the world would be like if he wasn't there. They give Bunker a lot of credit. Like, apparently if Bunker wasn't around, then the whole Earth and all its heroes would be taken over by the Dominion, or Dominators, rather, sorry. The aliens with the big giant teeth. That's giving Bunker a lot of credit. I won't say it, not really what would happen, but kind of interesting. And it is a new character design for Bunker by Andrew Drillen, which is really great. And then the Bat-Mite story is just a Bat-Mite story. I mean, what else can you say? So all in all, it's kind of fun. It's not my favorite DC holiday special, but yeah, it's okay. If you want some DC stories in the holiday vein, it might be right up your alley. Any thoughts, Rocky?
Not particularly. I wasn't even all that impressed with the varying covers. Although cover A is probably the best cover. Uh, we talked earlier about how this was a week with so many comics. This is exactly the type of scenario that would lead me not to buy an issue like this. Because there's 17 other comics to choose from for DC this week. How likely am I to buy an 80-page giant with self-contained anthology stories? Maybe there's a possibility, but I'm likely not to pick this up. Maybe if there was just fewer, I'd be more inclined to for the holidays. But this isn't something I'd be normally be inclined to buy. However, like I say, they're always feel-good stories. But I think maybe I'm an older reader, but I like a little bit more substance, and I just can't get enough substance on these filler stories that don't really, you know, I'm not drawn to them, quite frankly. But 'tis the season.
Yeah, good point. 'Tis the season. All right, up next we have Batman City of Madness #2, written and drawn by Christian Ward, letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. What do you think of this?
All right. Sorry, I wait for the comic to appear, so I'm a little bit behind. But uh, Christian Ward continues to weave this tale of Batman, uh, essentially trying to come to terms with the fact that he seems to have a counterpart. There seems to be a Gotham above, and there's a Gotham below. It's playing a little bit on. We've seen this play out in Batman Beyond. We've seen this play out occasionally. Different similar story points in various issues of different iterations of stories of Batman, where there's always there's the underground tunnels of Gotham, and there's we're getting shades of this with Ram V's Detective Comics, where there's the tunnels of Gotham form a framework. The city has a consciousness of its own, and in this case, and in Christian Ward's story here, Batman City of Madness, the Court of Owls has now they warn Batman in this issue that Batman, you have a counterpart that existed in the Gotham below. So there's the Gotham above, which is a little bit more in the light, and then there's the Gotham below, which is like the darker version. So all the citizens of Gotham, including Batman himself and all of Batman's villains, have darker aspects of themselves living in a place called the Gotham, below, the Gotham down below. And in the first issue, we were introduced to a young man who's from Kansas who comes to Gotham City to avenge the murder of his father, and ends up being a de facto sidekick to this sort of like this darker version of Batman that comes from the Gotham below, who wants to sort of use this kid to be a sidekick. And what's happened is that this Batman from Gotham below he was always kept at bay and sort of caged and prevented by the Court of Owls from coming up and sort of infecting the Gotham above. Because what'll happen is that the longer he stays in the Gotham above, is that he'll gain more power, and eventually they'll chaos will reign and this negative influence. It's almost like a dark universe infecting the normal universe. It's except we have a Gotham above and Gotham below. So it's kind of like that. Uh, Frankly, what I love more looking at this, and this is just looking at this digitally, and the reason why I'm picking this up physically is I just love the art. Christian Ward's art is truly, I love it. I love his different iterations and interpretations of the characters of Two Face. There's one in particular where Two Face's counterpart on the Gotham below, uh, normally Harvey Dent's face is it's separated vertically, while the Gotham below Harvey Two Faces, his face is separated horizontally, and just stuff like that, and the way it looks visually, it's really good. I'm impressed. I like his interpretation of the ventriloquist here. The ventriloquist has a darker edge to him here, where he destroys, he kills his dummy that he talks through, and he ends up cutting on his hand, and he uses his own hand, carving a face into his hand to be the puppet. There's really darker versions of that, and it's these darker versions of these characters that are infecting the main, I guess, the main Gotham proper. And Batman himself is prompted to think about his relationship to Robin and his own sidekick as this story progresses. And Nightwing is in it. And Nightwing, of course, it's appropriate that Nightwing's in it. He's the sidekick, the original sidekick. He was, of course, Dick Grayson, the original sidekick to Batman, and so there's clearly an interplay here and a juxtaposition of Batman's relationship with Nightwing versus this evil Batman's relationship with this new sidekick who he's trying to convince to use lethal force to avenge his father. And I thought it's very well done. Very The themes are very apparent as you read it. The art heightens the mood and tone of the story and the feel. And I thought I particularly like the fact that it's not overwrought with dialogue. Christian Ward is very wisely. I think it's a very economical use of dialogue. It's not overwrought with it, which allows the art to really shine, and it works. And I'm quite enjoying this. Again, another different take on Batman that I don't really care if it's in continuity or not. Similar to Gargoyle of Gotham, it's nice to have these very eclectic and different versions of Batman in a different setting, and it worked for me. So, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I echo a lot of what you said. I mean, the art is absolutely amazing. I mean, Christian Ward does have a tendency to use a lot of pinks and blues and purples in a kind of certain palette, and you sort of come to expect that from his art. So, I know some people might say, "Oh, his art always looks the same." I disagree. It might share colors at times, similar colors, but that's just his sort of aesthetic, right? But when you look at the line work, when you look at the textures that are brought here, I talk a lot of times about doing like ink, splatters or what have you, and how it kind of muddies it and it doesn't really work. He's doing it here, but it's almost like he's doing it with watercolor, because sometimes the ink splotches are much larger than you normally see, rather than like a little dot or whatever. It's bigger, but it's almost translucent, and it gives this ethereal feel. It gives this otherworldly feel to the story that he's telling. Now you add that to the narrative, where as you mentioned, you got the Gotham above and you have the Gotham below, and this kind of Batman-like monster that travels between the two. And it's clear that it's not just that this city is above and this one's below. You think below, you think hell, you think evil, you think dirty, you think depraved. And that's very much what it is when you look at obviously the human Batman of the Gotham above, and then the monstrous Batman of the Gotham below. So, when you're talking about wanting to differentiate between almost a normal, everyday city of Gotham City, and then the horror of the Gotham below, where it's more of a horror setting with monsters. And you mentioned it yourself, the horizontal difference between the Two Face of the Gotham below, where it's the whole bottom half of his face is like a skull, this grinning red skull, and it's terrifying. It's horrifying. So this story wouldn't work, I don't think, anywhere near as well as it's working with somebody else doing the art. Christian Ward doing the art and giving us this mystical feel of the story is very, very interesting, and I'm just loving it. Like it's really something. It's not the most original idea. You could look at something like what Scott Snyder did in Metal, right, with this idea of the dark multiverse or what have you. It's not. This is not so different from that, except instead of a multiverse, it's just kind of an evil version of Gotham City or what have you. But it's not exactly the same. It's not a one for one. But what really makes the story work is the artwork of Christian Ward, and even the way the story structure, the dialogue, the cadence of the story, the inclusion of the Court of Owls, like the way that the narrative part of the story is structured is lending itself to that ethereal feel as well. I mean, even things like the vocabulary that he's using here, the way Batman talks, the way Nightwing talks, the way Alfred talks, it really just helps to set the mood, because ultimately that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the artwork of Christian Ward setting a mood of, kind of almost like a horror story. I mean, look at the name, right? City of Madness, right? It's this idea of madness, of horror, of chaos. And it's really fantastic. And I'm very impressed with what Christian Ward's doing in the story. All right, up next we have Wesley Dodds, The Sandman, issue number 3, written by Robert Venditti, art by Riley Rosmo, colors by Yvonne Placencia, letters by Tom Napolitano. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this particular issue. This series continues to be really, really good, and this is right up there. It's maintaining the high quality and the fantastic work that's been done by this creative team so far. We've talked before, previous issues, how great Riley Rosmo's art is on the series. I feel like he only gets better over time. The Placencia colors are fantastic. The kind of the narrative voice that Robert Venditti gives to Wesley Dodds is great. For the first time, we get to see the person who stole all of Wesley Dodds' gases and his equipment and his scientific formulas and what have you. We get to see him confront Wesley Dodds as the Sandman, and he ends up exposing Wesley Dodds to some of his own gases when Dodds doesn't have his mask on. So we'll see what nightmares come from that to Dodds. But a little bit of a transitional issue as well, but absolutely fantastic. I've never been that interested in Wesley Dodds Sandman, and I can't imagine not reading the next issue of this series. Ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. Absolutely fantastic. Perfect art, perfect colors, and yeah, I'm just a huge fan of Robert Venditti. Anything he does, in my mind, is worth reading because it's so clear that he takes care to do his research, to understand who the characters are, and he's always additive, but never disrespectful or never dismissive of anything that's come before. So just really impressed. Absolutely love this series. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I like his relationship with his love interest, Diane Vanderlyle, and her. She's aware of his identity, and she kind of is helping him protect it. They're going through looking at the police files, investigating. Of course, uh, Wesley Dodd's house was burnt down. Somebody burned it down, and but before they did so, they stole all his files on all the different types of gases that he experimented on before he perfected his sleeping gas. He of course created some gases that were very lethal and that could be used for war. And this darker version of the Sandman, ultimately he ends up meeting him here, and it's literally a battle of the Sandman, so to speak. And it ends up that they both end up getting exposed to each other's gases, and I'm not sure exactly how lethal the gas is that Wesley ends up inhaling here, but it's suggested that next issue he's going to suffer the ill effects of the gas attack and the battle that he had with the sort of like the evil Sandman. Uh, and I don't know. Did you catch? Does this evil Sandman have a name yet? Does it?
You know, I didn't
I don't
I
know.
didn't recall see yeah, I didn't recall seeing one.
Yeah. So if anyone if anyone wants to leave a comment, if they know what this evil Sandman's name is, please let us know. I'm not sure. He looks, I actually like the look of this evil Sandman better than Wesley Dodds Sandman because I like the darker colors. Just because I think it looks a little bit more cool. But no, I thought this works very well. I'm actually really curious to know who it is, and I'm wondering if this evil Sandman is it going to be a brand new character? Is writer Robert Venditti, is he going to be additive to the mythology of Sandman by adding somebody new to the mythology? This does take place in the 1940s. We know that with respect to with what Jeremy Adams is doing on Jay Garrick Flash, Jay Garrick's adventures take place in the modern day. We got Alan Scott, Tim Sherry telling Alan Scott stories in the 1940s and the present. It's interesting that Robert Venditti is sort of staying in the past, and I kind of like that because I wouldn't mind seeing in this Sandman stories. Robert Venditti, I like it. He seems very comfortable writing Sandman stories, and I would like to see him tell some more, even have some JSA guest stars, uh, which he had Wildcat show up last issue in his secret identity. I'd like to see more JSA adventures, JSA characters show up in Sandman, but keep it a Sandman comic because I really like this so far, and I'm not sure if this is just a mini series or whatever it is, but I'm enjoying this, and I'm really curious to see how this first story arc is gonna wrap up. If it is an ongoing series, but even if it isn't, I'll be happy to take what we can get.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a limited series. I kind of wonder if the evil Sandman isn't in some way related to Wheeler Vanderlyle, who's supposedly was a friend of Wesley Dodds' father and is supposed to be kind of a mentor figure if he
Right.
actually knows that Wesley Dodds is Sandman or what have you. But yeah, 5 issues is the length of the series, so it is a mini. But yeah, like you said, it's just been very very entertaining. All right, up next we have Detective Comics number 1079, written by Rom V, Jason Sean Alexander with Liam Sharp on art, Dave Stewart on colors, Ariana Mayer on letters. It turns out everything you thought you knew about what Catwoman was doing and the heist and the way to save Bruce Wayne was all a fake out, and really they were all the distraction to actually get the Orgrams to kill Bruce Wayne, supposedly, or to make them think that they had hung Batman, and then when they rush his body off to actually steal his body. We find out that when Catwoman went and visited Bruce Wayne the night before, that she gave him a little concoction that Poison Ivy had created to simulate death, and they steal his body, and they're going to try to smuggle him out of the city while all the chaos ensues. And what the end game of the Orgams will be, I guess we'll have to wait and see. So I enjoyed that, very much in keeping with a heist feel, but also in keeping with who Catwoman is, the fact that it was a double cross all along. I haven't been the biggest fan of the Jason Sean Alexander art because it's not as clean as a style as I would like to see, and I've even seen him do a style that's much cleaner. But this is very muddy and kind of um, textured, and I'm just not that big of a style, a big of a fan of it. So, but it seems like the story's coming to a head. I'm very curious to see, this sprawling story that Ramvy's telling, how it's all going to play out in the end. I guess we'll have to see. And there is a backup story as well, which is a flashback to the Orgams coming to Gotham City, um, which I didn't really feel like added that much. But it very much felt like a Dan Water story, and he is the one that writes it. Juan Ferreira handles the art and colors with Steve Wands on letters. So, what are your thoughts on Detective?
It's funny. This entire detective series, Ramby, from it started off. There were issues where I really appreciated. I enjoyed how Ramsey started his Detective Comics run, and then it got very very in depth. It got very deep and a little bit esoteric in parts, and then there was backups that lost me a little bit. But I have to say that I'm relieved to see that it's ending on on a bang here. It's I'm enjoying these latter issues all the more, and I feel like I'm being rewarded for reading those issues two, sometimes three times, and taking the notes that I did because there is a lot of substance to this story. and and I appreciate all the times, even my confusion on some of the backups of which you helped explain to me. I actually appreciate it because I do feel that Ram V has put in a lot of work to these stories. Could there be more clarity in parts? Yes. Can I be more constructively critical? Yes. But at the end of the day, here, I really love I love all these moments that are happening. Whether it's Azrael battling the wolf guy, whether it's Leon and Cheshire battling in the pits and in the of Gotham, whether it's Selena reminding the readers and thank you Ram V. People forget that Ram V's Catwoman run was we loved his. Most of us really enjoyed his Catwoman run, and and to Cat Ramsey reminding us that Catwoman is a thief, and so of course she would steal Batman's corpse, and so I thought that was just it really was beautiful, and I actually really love the use of the poker metaphor about playing a bluff and that Selena's really good at this. This is Selena's wheelhouse. You want to get Batman out of a jam. I mean, Selena knows what she's doing, and those of us who pride ourselves on thinking we know the character Catwoman, Ramsey knows Catwoman just as well as we do. And I gotta admit, I can't, I feel like a fool saying this now, but she got me. I thought I did think I didn't see it coming, and I don't. Okay, maybe I'm in the minority. Okay, but it happens. But I enjoyed this. I was like, oh geez, and I felt like I do watching Ocean's 11 or something. It's like, oh well, you thought that they were caught, and you thought that this was all, they're doomed now. Well, guess what? No, what I thought I saw was wrong, and I loved how it played it back, and it was so well done, and I really really enjoyed it. And the other thing I want to comment on are the covers of Detective Comics. I love the cover A's. Uh, I'm rewarded. I feel for just buying the cover A's of the Detective Comics run because the cover A's have a very unique artistic style in all the covers, and they look absolutely beautiful. Yeah, they look absolutely beautiful side by side when I take them out and I look them all bagged and boarded. They look fantastic. So I feel like this is really coming to a close, and I'm genuinely I'm really I don't know how this is going to end. What's going to happen to the Organs? Are they all going to be wiped out? They still seem very powerful. It's still not clear to me that Batman can win. I found it a little odd that if I was really going to be nitpicky here, they hung Batman and Selena was hoping that Batman's neck muscles would prevent him from dying, and that he wouldn't actually his neck wouldn't be snapped because his neck wouldn't because Batman is just inherently too strong. Neck wouldn't snap, and she had previously injected him when she kissed him last issue and snuck into a cell and injected him with something that Poison Ivy gave her, but that somehow it wouldn't weaken his neck, and so that was a huge chance that Selena was taking. I don't, I thought that Ramsey was being a little bit sneaky with that. I don't know if I quite buy that explanation, but I'm going to buy it because I just love the way I just like the way that the story is told, and I feel rewarded for the journey that I've been on with Ram V, and this is definitely one of again one of the better comics this week in my opinion.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and again, I'm curious to see how it all plays out. And the other thing I'm curious about, I mentioned Court of Owls, right? That's a concept that's huge. It's been added to Gotham City, and other writers have picked it up and run with it. It's a big concept. The Orgams are a big concept as well. I'll be interested to see if anybody picks them up and uses them later on the way the Court of Owls has been used. So we'll have to wait and see. Okay, up next we have the final issue of Danger Street from writer Tom King, Jorge Fornes on art, Dave Stewart on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. We've loved this series since the beginning. How do you think it all turned out in the end?
I gotta say that I uh, well, you know what? True to form, if you've been, this was actually, I won't say it's predictable because I can't say I predicted how it, I knew for certain how it was all going to end, but I did think it was going to be a happy ending. And that was because of the manner in which this whole thing has been told like a fairy tale. Narratively, that's exactly how Tom King has been telling this story. This entire story has been narrated by Dr. Fate's helmet. The helmet of Naboo is telling the story, and each character is either a prince or a princess or a rogue, or uh, it's always using terms of mythology, terms of fairy tales, and it and so is it any surprise that this ends with everyone living happily ever after? And what and how everything sort of comes into play because the central conceit that between the green team, the evil green team, and the outsiders is that way back when they were both young, both the outsiders and the green team were attending the same school, and it was somebody who had the helmet of fate that essentially had them play a game, and the green team ended up becoming billionaires. They got that reward, and the outsiders were sort of cursed by being sort of like mutant looking humans essentially. And now that all of everything comes into to play here at the end, and there was a lot to wrap up because Warlord was dead, and he was lying on the ground. Creeper was shot, and so all this coming into play. Lady Cop having the helmet of fate. So, Warlord comes back to life, and Creeper is back amongst the living. But now what they need to do is they Atlas, who was killed, who was holding up the world. Somebody's got to replace Atlas because they can't resurrect Atlas. So what do? It's John Goodlooks, a member of that kid of the Dingbats of Danger Street. Goodlooks has to be the one that holds up the world. And I thought, what a wonderful way to sort of end this. And I love the idea that this group of kids who just hang out and they love each other, you know, uh, they're the ones that end up having to save the day. And even Lady Cop's aversion to Superman, grounded in a trauma that she had when she was attacked when she was a younger woman, and needing to be helped, but never, and she wasn't saved by a superhero, and she experienced a trauma. Lady Cop herself, uh, you know, taking it upon herself to stand up to gods, and at one point, even at the end, when she's facing the Doctor Fate, and Doctor Fate sort of laughs at her when she points a gun at him, and he says, "I'm a god," basically telling her, "I'm a god, honey," and she's like, I got no problem with shooting a god. Good lord. Um, she certainly set up to quite a few menaces here and heroes, and the interactions with the green team got their comeuppance, and Metamorpho gets his arm back, and the way everything is resolved, and even Orion, the son of Darkseid, wearing that Darkseid is shirt. He's played out to be the alcoholic that he is. His interactions with the Creeper and how the Creeper sort of has sort of a redemptive arc. The Creeper feels bad that he's not able to save the Dingbats, but the way the Dingbats come together at the end to go with good looks, and they join good looks in going through the mother box, which is empowered by Starman to allow them to be the ones that essentially hold up and save the world. The Dingbats of Danger Street are the true heroes that ultimately save the entire world and end up, replacing Atlas and holding up the world. And what I love about that is that it refers back to those 70s and those first issue classics that DC imploded, that everyone shuns those issues. They're in dollar bins everywhere, even after all time. For those characters to get this kind of tribute and send off, especially the Dingbats to Danger Street on the beautiful A cover, where a fantastic cover showing them all of those characters in all their glory. I just thought this was a great way to end the series. And uh, Lady Cop herself expressing some frustration to Dr. Fate at the end, and just how just the just why do good things happen to bad people? Well, we just do. We don't know the answer to those questions, and that's ultimately the message here. And sometimes fairy tales happen, and sometimes all you can do is just sit back and relax and enjoy any story that begins with those wonderful words "once upon a time." So I love this. I love this series, and Tom King. I think anybody should pick this up and enjoy it because it's self-contained, it's enjoyable, it's 12 issues long, and I think you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck when this inevitably comes out as a trade.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, having it narrated by the helmet of fate itself, which is you talk about this being a fairy tale, it's a magical, very mythical artifact, and having the Helmet of Fate not only narrate it but be such an important part of the story, it just makes sense, right? Like if anything can be behind taking all these disparate ideas of, Lady Cop, Dingbats of Danger Street, Green Team, this version of Starman, Warlord, and Atlas, and making them all make sense together in the same story, Manhunter, Codename Assassin, whatever, it's going to have to be Metamorpho. It's going to have to be brought together by something magical, something like the Helmet of Fate. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the final cover, the final main cover of Dingbats of Danger Street, which is so perfectly drawn by Jorge Fornes, right? Like, it's all the disparate characters, but by far the biggest thing that dominates the cover, right there in the center, everybody sort of hanging off of it, is the Helmet of Fate. It just makes so much fun. This series has been absolutely fantastic. Right from the start, we were impressed with the way Tom King took all these characters, which seemingly don't go together, and made them all work. But the other thing that makes it work, other than just the story structure and it making sense narratively, is the strength of Lady Cop as a character, right? You mentioned it yourself at the end when the Chaos God confronts her and says, "Hey, I'm a god." And she almost looks at the guy like, "I don't fucking care. So what, you think I can't handle gods? I haven't handled gods before." Like, she's just, in the hands of Tom King, she's just such a character. Never would I have thought. I have that. Of all the first issue specials that I don't have, the one that I do have, and I don't even know where I got it from, I have the Lady Cop. I have that orange cover, the blue logo, whatever. I have the Lady Cop. I've never read it. It's just in a box somewhere. I have no idea where it came from. But that's the one I have, and never would I have thought, yeah, I want to see, like, when the story ended, when I finished reading the issue, I was like, man, I hope I see more Lady Cop at some point somewhere, right? She's such a hard character, obviously, to bring into continuity. But yeah, I would want to see more Lady Cop. And then, the happy ending, it coming full circle. I mean, at the end, Lady Cop's writing a ticket to another group of kids on Danger Street that are riding an ATV. This time it's a group of
Those are the
girls.
outsiders. Yeah, those are the
Yeah, yeah,
outsiders with
yeah,
the.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's just, again, it's so much fun. Highly recommend it. I can't wait to read it again myself, in kind of a one sitting situation with, um, with all the issues now that all the issues are out. But one of the only disappointment that I have as a reader is, even when I read it collected, I've read it before, I know what's coming. So this is one of those series where that anybody that hasn't read it and is going to sit down and read the collected edition, I'm a little bit envious that you're going to get to experience it for the first time in that way. Um, because again, it's just one of those series that just needs to be read and appreciated for what it is. Absolutely amazing. Curious to see what Tom King and Jorge Fornes are going to do together up next. I guess we'll see. All right, last book we're going to talk about in detail: Speed Force #2, written by Jarrett Williams, art by Danielle Dinaculo and Francisco Mortarino, colors by Andrew Dalhouse, letters by Dave Sharp. Dare I ask what you thought of this, Rocky?
Well, well, you read my mind. Uh, Honestly, I actually had a mini rant planned for this, and I thought to myself, uh, this is going to sound overly harsh, but I'm currently contemplating. I'm putting together my top 10 lists for 2023, and I'm contemplating whether or not I don't like being negative, so I'm inclined not to do a top 10 worst DC comics for 2023 because I want to stay positive. But I got to be honest, the first issue of Speed Force and this one would probably be in the top 10 list of one of the most point. There's so many things wrong with these first two issues that I honestly, I'm hesitant to say too much because I don't want to be too negative, other than to say this. So I'm gonna actually try to be positive and just say I think that the art's not my cup of tea, but the art's not bad. I don't mind the art by artist Daniel Dean Nicchio, Francesco Matarino. It's got sort of a manga feel to it. Uh, it's actually surprisingly detailed in parts. I think artistically they're very challenged. They're very creative with what they can squeeze on the panel. What throws me off is the writing. I think that there's far too much dialogue in this issues. Far too much dialogue. It's way too wordy. There's way too much exposition. The writer what the writer attempts to do, writer Jarrett Williams does is on the one hand, I think Jarrett Williams has got so much story and dialogue he has in his head that he wants to tell, that I think if this was a movie and all these people were talking like this, maybe this would be very comedic cartoon. But it's very I found it very jarring to read. And I found it really eclectic because it Mr. Terrific, and the speedsters, along with Connor Kent and the bouncing boy from Teen Titans, whose name I forget. Uh, he- they're they're investigating the disappearance of a bunch of lab technicians from various labs around the globe, and they might all be dead. They don't know. They don't know where these people have gone. They might all have been killed, and yet everyone's joking around. They're Mr. Terrific is more concerned about being on an app and joining a social media, and everyone's joking around and being all happy go lucky, and 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 such an eclectic. I found it very jarring. On the one hand, we're supposed to be laughing and joyful, and everyone has all this good rapport, but they're investigating these really dark events, and they want to chase these Mexican speedsters that resonate with the same frequency as the energy source they picked up when these lab techs disappeared. And it just feels very jarring to me. And I personally feel, uh, I was able maybe to piece together kind of what happened, but there's a strong side of me that thinks that new readers here are going to be completely lost. There's no reminder in this issue as to what's going on. Nowhere in this issue does somebody, despite the incredible amount of dialogue, does anybody turn to the person next to them and ask, WTF are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we doing what we're doing? In between all the in jokes and the side and the pop culture references and the talk of video games and everything. I mean, Jared, the writer is impressing us with all his knowledge of pop culture, but forgot to remind the readers why everybody in this comic is moving around and where exactly are they going and why. So that's my miniature rant. I uh, uh, this is not my cup of tea, but I do like the cover. Cover A is pretty cool, and artistically, I think the art is up to task, but it's too wordy, and I think that the plot needs to be more focused. But that's my mini rant. So, what do you think?
Not too bad. Yeah, Roundhouse is his name.
Roundhouse, thank you.
Kind of a dorky character, almost like a hey, people love Bouncing Boy from Legion of Superheroes. Let's create a teen version of him and throw him back. I think it was when Tomasi did the Teen Titans, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah,
But anyway, yeah, I mean the first issue. So I thought this was better than the first issue,
yeah,
but that's a very low bar. And the first issue, very choppy, jumping around. Hey, something's wrong with the Speed Force. Oh my God, we haven't seen that story before, right? And the big reveal at the end with who the villains are, and then we get none of the villains. We get none of the music executive mustache twirling villain until the very end. Like
yeah.
they need to be explored. Instead, we jump over to Mr. Terrific and the social media stuff, like you were talking about. And Roundhouse shows up, and meet him at one point. We can say 10 minutes later, and then I'm like, wait, what's going on? Like, it just felt so choppy. You're right about it being unnecessarily wordy. It's hard to follow what's going on. All these different characters thrown into it, like it just doesn't make sense narratively. Like it needs to be more focused. It's trying to do too many things, and so it's not succeeding at any one thing. It tries to be funny, but it's trying to be serious. It's trying to be science fiction-y. It's trying to be too many things. It needs to be more focused. Just try to do one thing and do that well instead of trying to do all these things and not doing any of them particularly well. You're right about the art, that it's very strong in terms of storytelling. It's not my particular style either. I know when this artist teamed up with Tom Taylor on I think it was a Boom series, Seven Secrets, that was done very, very well. The art felt a little more focused there as well. Here it feels a little unfocused, kind of like the story itself. So I don't know, maybe it's supposed to look that way because the story is so unfocused. I'm just not really sure, but yeah, this is not something that I could recommend. It's a bit of a chore to read. And I do have a feeling that once we have the context of the whole story and you went back and read it all together, it'd probably make more sense. But I'm not reading this more than once. it's kind of a chore to get through the first time because, again, yeah, so unnecessarily wordy, and you just wonder. Like, I'm not familiar with this writer at all. Just wonder if this is their first work and they just haven't learned that economy of language that you need um, for comics. Let the words do some of the heavy lifting. You don't have to explain every little thing in dialogue. You can kind of let the art do some of the heavy lifting. So
Yeah.
anyway, in terms of
We got one more. Robin Lives.
yeah,
I really was curious to know your thoughts on that.
I mean, okay, this is a comic I read way back when, Batman 428. Again, in the back of 427, there was a 1-900 number. You called one number if you wanted uh, Jason Todd to live, and you called the other number if you wanted him to die. Readers voted for him to die. That still surprises me to this day. I think it was like 50 cents a call back in whatever it was,
I made the
1987.
call. I voted for him to die. I hated Jason Todd. I hated Jason Todd.
Yeah. So you were.
Yeah.
I literally think the vote was within 5 votes.
And,
I
and my
didn't vote.
and my parents paid the 50 cents. I didn't care.
Yeah, and who knows how many people called multiple times. But anyway, he did die. But they obviously, hey, he could have lived, so they had the art commissioned. If you compare this to the issue that was actually printed, there's only one page that's different. The rest of the story is exactly the same. So, um, it, I don't. Again, I don't know why DC's putting this out now. What's their big uh, fan outcry to have it? I don't think there was. So I don't really have much to say. I'm still surprised that DC did this, but man, it's legendary in comics history. So for that reason, I'm glad it exists. Did this need to be printed when it's just one page difference? I don't know. I mean, probably not. But DC's milking it for all it's worth. They're even so they're releasing this. You can even get the variant edition where it's a foil cover, if you so choose. But I mean, I'm not going to review a comic from whatever it is, 1980, 88, I think that it was when it first came out, because the aesthetic is totally different than now. But I will say, Jim Starlin wrote it. He's a legendary creator. Jim Aparo, to me, is the Batman artist because, he's the Batman artist that I knew that when I first started reading Batman. Because this was not too long after I started buying Batman on a regular basis. I wasn't a regular Batman reader. I'd dip in here or there. But then I remember getting Batman 401 because I think it was like that Millennium event tie-in, that terrible Millennium event. And then I kept buying Batman after that, which is exactly why they used to do the tie-ins back in the day and tie them into regular series because they were hoping they could get you hooked on it. And yeah, I love the Jim Aparo art, and I just kept buying Batman after that. This wasn't that long after I started picking it up on a regular basis. And yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked that I didn't call, but I didn't really know. There wasn't a comic store in my town. I bought my stuff at a convenience store. So I didn't really have a sense, it wasn't like today where you can get on social media, you can talk to other comic fans, even if you don't know any personally, and you can get a sense, oh, people don't like this character or people love this character. I had no idea that everybody hated Jason Todd. I didn't particularly care for him either, but I had no idea the level of hate was out there the way that it was. So yeah, I don't really have much else to add other than that, but what are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's funny that I think the appearance of the Ayatollah Khomeini or whatever, I think really heightened this issue back in the day. One of the things that stood out for me, aside from the page, obviously, where Batman just says he's alive, is it was shocking to me how even though I know he was going to be alive in this issue, because that's the central conceit of the entire issue, it didn't make sense that he was alive because his own mother, who's killed, said, Jason protected me from the blast. He's such a great son. And yet he manages to be alive. And so right away, I didn't believe it. But yet, of course, that's the central conceit. I actually noticed the writing. If I was being critical of the writing, it is. I expect a high quality. I would expect if this type of bat story was written today, I would expect a better written story. I didn't think it was written very well. It reminded me of the style of writing back then. With all apologies to Jim Starlin, this was a classic take. This was the same issue in all but one page, really, not significantly different at all. Uh, it doesn't read as well as today's Batman. quite frankly. And a lot of the Batman stories that you and I criticize are written better than this. Uh, so this is one example where this is a prime example of what I wonder, you know, so many of us, and I do it once in a while too. I talk pretty cocky sometimes, talking about, oh, I wish they were written like it was in the past, and I speak nostalgically about how great writing was in the past, and now it's like, I don't know. The writers we have today are much better, I think, than we give them credit for, especially if we're going to use this issue as the metric here. And I don't say that to be a jerk. I just say that to be honest. I think maybe sometimes we need to appreciate the writers that we have in present time, and that they're maybe a little bit better than we give them credit for at times. So it's sort of like this was a nice reminder of that. That maybe I shouldn't rant so much on some issues.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. It was a different audience back then, so the writing wasn't as sophisticated, and you were a little more spoon fed because I think they were aimed at younger readers. I think that's a part of it. So, anyway, as far as collections that are coming out today, let me adjust my filters here. So we have Nightwing Volume 4, the Leap hardcover. That's the Tom Taylor run. And this particular hardcover collects issues 97 through 100, as well as the 2022 annual. Then you have Dark Knights of Steel, also Tom Taylor. It's volume 2, so it collects issues 7 through 12. You have a Young Justice Omnibus volume 1 hardcover. So that collects issues from Young Justice 1 through 19, and then a bunch of other tie-in issues that are in that same era. So that's the Todd Knock, Peter David era of Young Justice. You've got Batman Gotham After Midnight Deluxe hardcover, which collects the Gotham After Midnight series 1 through 12. You also have Multiversity Harley Screws Up the DCU hardcover, which is the Frank Thierry series. There's a new version of Watchmen. It's an absolute hardcover edition. You've got a hardcover of Infinite Crisis, and then the Superman 78 series from Robert Venditti. That a sequel to that is coming out currently, but the first Superman 78 with art by Wilfredo Torres has a hardcover that's out this week as well. So a lot of books to choose from, Rocky. Can you narrow it down to one for your book of the week?
Yes, I can, and I suspect we might end up with the same one here, but maybe not. But I'm gonna have to go with Danger Street because I just think that again, I really loved the happy ending. The whole series was told essentially like a glorified fairy tale. And there was one issue, that all fight issue between the Manhunter and the codename assassin, that I thought was a little bit of a miss. But I could understand from a fairy tale point of view having the two knights battle each other. I could understand it given the concept of how Tom King narratively approached the series. So even when there was a miss for me, it was still done in a manner in which I find I could understand and appreciate and respect. And so definitely my pick of the week. And yeah, most of the comics this week were a miss for me, but this one was the cherry on top.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd go so far as to say most of the comics were a miss for me. I thought Batman and Robin 4 was good. I enjoyed Outsiders. I know you didn't enjoy it as much as I did. The Santa Claus Silent Night series has been good. The second issue of Batman Gargoyle of Gotham was very good. I thought Action Comics was good. I enjoyed Beast World. Superman Lost, for its little foibles here or there, I thought was good. So yeah, overall, Batman City of Madness, very good. Wesley Dodds, very good. So,
You
and
can
one
only
thing we
pick
didn't
one.
talk
You
about,
can only pick one.
yeah, I know. I didn't mention the Birds of Prey Uncovered #1. We didn't talk about that, but that's just basically a collection of Birds of Prey variants. So if you're a fan of that, also I thought Green Lantern was great, and so was Detective Comics. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I can only pick one, and it can't be anything but Danger Street. For all the reasons you said, and the reasons we talked about when we talked about it in detail. Just what a pleasure, what fun, what a great, technically well put together comic. Gorgeous art, gorgeous cover, gorgeous colors, consistent, and I enjoyed it throughout. That issue that you didn't enjoy as much with the Manhunter and Codename Assassin going against each other was actually one of my favorite. I thought it was brilliant what King did there. So Yeah, I mean this is a series that made me a fan of Lady Cop. How could it not be my pick of the
Yeah,
week? Talk about nailing the landing, right?
yeah.
We had some other things that ended on a whimper. Um, this ended on a high note, so that's my pick. Appreciate you all joining us as always. Apologies for it being so long, but a ton of books to talk about this week as always. Hopefully it slows down in the upcoming weeks. Want to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas. We appreciate the support. Anything to add, Rocky?
Uh, yeah, just a happy holidays to everyone. Get out there, get your Christmas shopping done. Don't be like me and wait to the last minute. And yeah, and also, when Jason and I are bitching about this is called a first world problem. When we are complaining about too many DC comics in a week, that is a wonderful problem to have. We're
Yeah,
just bitching about it because we got to read them all for you guys. So, but make no mistake, you're at least going to have lots of choices when you go to your local comic shop, and go to your local comic shop and support them over the Christmas holiday. And happy holidays to everyone.
yeah, 100% echo that sentiment. Support your local comic shop. Go buy some gifts there for sure. So if you're checking us out on YouTube, don't forget to go to wherever you get your podcast from, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe so you can check out all our other audio only content. If you're listening to us audio only, you want to be sure to subscribe to Rocky's channel. Just go to YouTube, Comic Space Boom, exclamation point, subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave some comments below. Let us know which books you loved, which books you didn't like as much. We appreciate the engagement there on YouTube. So thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.